Chapter 3513, Chapter 3513, Your Request. Chapter 3513, Your Request. Li Chaopan had no idea what to do with Feng Wu, while Feng Yi looked at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Wu's reaction surprised her. How could she be so confident? Moreover, things had really changed as she had said. In fact, the Feng clan had gained the upper hand. Feng Wu looked back at Feng Yi. Feng Sang pulled Feng Yi over immediately. Feng Wu looked at Feng Yi seriously. What do you think? Feng Yi asked. What do you mean? Feng Wu said. You have a few options now. The first one is to go back with Li Chaopan and continue your path as the daughter-in-law of Duke Li. You'll have to put up with your husband, who doesn't treat you as a human, and will continue to sleep with his toy boy. It'll be a mess. The faces of the people from Duke Li's family darkened, but no one dared to refute Feng Wu because what she said was true. Feng Wu said, the second option is divorce. Li Chaopan wanted to divorce you by kicking you out, but we can turn this into a fair divorce. You'll take the initiative to propose the divorce and take the dowry back. From then on, we'll have nothing to do with Duke Li's family. Feng Wu said, you only have 5 minutes left. Make the choice now. Feng Yi said, Aye. Can I still choose now? Do I still have the right to do that? I don't want to implicate my sisters. The Feng clan's reputation must be restored. As for myself, it doesn't matter. Back then, I was blind enough to choose Li Chaopan myself. In the end, he turned out to be such a despicable person. I don't have any other thoughts in my life. I only want to take care of my parents and raise my children at home. From then on, I won't have anything to do with the outside world. I'd rather die than go back to that family, but my son is still there. I can imagine what kind of a person they'll raise him into. Xiao Wu. Feng Yi looked at Feng Wu pleadingly. She knew very well that her father, mother, and siblings couldn't help her, except for Feng Wu. At that thought, Feng Yi looked at Feng Wu pleadingly again. Niao and Guangguang are both my children. I can't bear to see a little boy stay in a place like that. I'm not asking to change his surname to mine. I just want to raise my son and daughter myself. Feng Wu summed it up for her. So your request is, 1. You'll propose a divorce and take back your dowry. 2. The Feng clan's reputation will be restored, and so will be yours. 3. Your son will return to you. 4. No one in Duke Li's mansion will be allowed to harass you. Feng Wu's request was even more demanding than Feng Yi's, so she looked at Feng Wu in a daze. Feng Wu asked, Is that all? Feng Yi said, Yes, but she didn't even dare to hope that Duke Li's family would stop harassing her. She was already prepared for a long-term confrontation. Feng Wu turned to Li Chaopan. Did you hear that? She was very busy and wanted to get this done as soon as possible. However, Li Chaopan sneered. That's impossible. Feng Wu looked at Yuminji. Yuminji understood right away. Let's go and report to the emperor. With that, he picked up Li Chaopan and headed for the imperial palace, as if he was handling a chicken. Feng Wu followed him, so did Feng Yi, still looking confused. Lady Wang never came out. Neither did Feng Yanfeng. Feng Wu, Feng Sang, and even Feng Yiran knew Feng Wu was here, but the two people had never come out. Master, madam, what should we do now? Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang didn't come out, but they watched from outside. Chapter 3514, Chapter 3514, Case closed. Chapter 3514, Case closed. Feng Yanfeng was a little embarrassed when he heard what the steward said. What happened outside was such a big deal. In fact, he wanted to go out at first, but the people from Duke Li's family were too fierce and domineering. He was afraid that he would be beaten up if he went out. Who knew that things would turn out like this? Seeing that Feng Wu had the upper hand, Feng Yanfeng wanted to come out, but Lady Wang told him that Feng Wu might still lose. In the end, the couple hid behind the door and peeked out through the crack until Feng Wu and the others left. Feng Yanfeng wanted to come out, but the people outside wouldn't leave. Not only that, but they also sat on the ground and chatted in groups of 2s and 3s. Everyone was guessing who would win. They were sitting here, just to wait for an outcome. Initially, they thought that they would wait for a long time, Some people even brought over stools, and street vendors were already selling drinks and snacks. However, they never expected that they would have the outcome so quickly. An hour later, Feng Wu returned with Feng Yi. The people from Duke Li's family moved Feng Yi's dowry into the Feng clan in large carriages. The crowd was astonished. Even Feng Yanfeng himself was shocked, let alone the onlookers. When Feng Yi married back then, did she have so much dowry? He didn't think so. Hence, Feng Yanfeng walked out. Before he could ask, Feng Sang shouted angrily, "Father, you're finally here." Feng Yanfeng was embarrassed. He was the braver one. His wife still didn't dare to come out. "What's going on?" Feng Yanfeng asked with a straight face, pretending that he had just come back. The surrounding people started to talk among themselves. "Did Master Feng just come back? We've been sitting here. Wouldn't we have seen him come back? Maybe he came in from the back door. It's not like we don't have people sitting there. I didn't hear them say anything." Feng Yanfeng blushed at the discussions around him. But he pretended not to hear anything, and just looked at Feng Sang. Feng Sang didn't know whether it was true or not. Fortunately, although Feng Yanfeng didn't show up, the Feng clan still benefited greatly. Hence, Feng Sang told Feng Yanfeng what had happened in court. It would also give an explanation to the onlookers. It turned out that Li Chaopan still wanted to argue after they got there. But Feng Wu and Yu Minji threw evidence at him one after another. Duke Li and Li Chaopan were both dumbfounded. If he continued to quibble, he was afraid that more information disadvantageous to Duke Li's family would be revealed. In the end, Duke Li had to admit defeat. He asked Li Chaopan to welcome Feng Yi back and pretend that none of this had happened. However, Feng Yi wouldn't have it and insisted on a divorce. Feng Sang found it strange. His Majesty, who was supposed to be dignified, looked so kind when he saw Feng Wu. Even her father didn't treat her so kindly. His Majesty's verdict was exactly the same as Feng Wu had requested. He granted Feng Wu's all requests. Therefore, in less than 2 hours, the lawsuit that had reached the emperor was closed. The Feng clan won, and Duke Li lost. As Feng Sang spoke, her cadence rose and fell, and she reenacted everything that had happened in the throne room. "I really didn't expect Duke Li's family to be so vicious. Their family is really in a mess. And that Lian Sheng, TSK. Chapter 35:15 Chapter 35:15 Yu Minji won. Chapter 35:15 Yu Minji won. Feng Sang said proudly, her face glowing. This time, she could really hold her head high. Feng Sang couldn't help but look at Feng Wu when she told the story. She had discovered the truth. She had been miserable when she was Feng Wu's enemy, but it was great when she was Feng Wu's teammate. When Feng Sang finished, Feng Yanfeng gave her a strange look. "So the Feng clan won the lawsuit?" Feng Sang said matter-of-factly, "Of course. With Feng Wu around we won't lose." With that, the group entered the house. At that moment, Lady Wang walked out and glared at Feng Sang. "What are you talking about?" Feng Sang got excited. "Mother, you didn't go to the palace. There were so many civil and military officials there, and they were all staring at us. I was so nervous, but Feng Wu kept talking and was so aggressive toward Duke Li. Duke Li was so angry that he stomped his feet, but he couldn't do anything to her." Lady Wang wanted to say something, but no words came out. She gave Feng Wu a silent look, then turned to Feng Yi. Feng Yi's matter was resolved just like that. Of course, there would be future troubles, but they wouldn't surface for the time being. Fallen Star Yard. Yu Minji gloated. "What do you think? I'm good, aren't I? If I hadn't brought that Lian Sheng here at the critical moment, you wouldn't have won so easily." Feng Wu said, "Right." Yu Minji said, "Hey, what's with that look on your face? Shouldn't you be admiring me now?" Feng Sun couldn't take it anymore and glared at him. "Yu Minji, that's enough." Yu Minji snorted. "I'm better than you right now. What, are you jealous? Then become a spiritual overlord like me." Feng Sun was so angry that smoke almost came out of his head. He was already a level 9 spiritual king, and he would be able to reach the spiritual overlord realm in the blink of an eye. But that still hadn't happened. What could Feng Sun do? He could only change the subject. What are you doing here? Yu Minji looked at Feng Sun in resignation. Are you an idiot? Of course. I'm here to save Xiaowu. Feng Sun gave Yu Minji a suspicious look. Why did he have a strange feeling that Yu Minji was here for something else? Tell me the truth. Feng Sun stared at Yu Minji. It was a pity that Feng Sun wasn't Jun Linyuan. If Jun Linyuan had said that with a straight face, Yu Minji might have been terrified. But Feng Sun, what do you mean? Can't I save Xiaowu? Do you know how many people are watching Xiaowu? And how many spiritual overlords have gathered in the imperial capital to kill her? Yu Minji snorted. I've already said that anyone who wants to kill Xiao will have to walk over my dead body. Feng Sun frowned. How can your father let it go if you're dead? Yu Minji said. That's why the Dark Dynasty is fighting for Xiaowu this time. That involved a lot of things. Feng Sun didn't believe him. You're a wastrel. How could your father allow you to do that? Yu Minji put his hands on his hips and said smugly. That's why I have to take my wife back and let my father know how wonderful the person I want to protect is. Wait, Feng Sun finally realized what he meant. What did you just say? Your wife? Who's your wife? Yu Minji stared at Feng Sun as if he were an idiot. Chapter 35:16 Chapter 35:16 Yu Minji 2. Chapter 35:16 Yu Minji 2. Feng Sun said. Are you referring to? Yu Minji said. Of course. I'll marry no one but Xiaowu. Feng Wu smacked Yu Minji on the head. Watch your language. Yu Minji rubbed his head where Feng Wu had knocked him, and looked at Feng Wu in frustration. I'm only telling the truth. Why wouldn't you believe me? I dare you to call her your wife again. Feng Sun flared up. She's my buddy's girl. Get lost. Yu Minji wouldn't have it. Turning around, he gave Feng Sun a hard time. Your buddy? Which one? Feng Sun was so angry that he laughed. Who else could it be? The one that specializes in defeating you, of course. Yu Minji asked. Are you talking about Jun Linyuan? Feng Sun asked. What? Are you scared? Yu Minji said. I'm scared? Feng Sun, I'm warning you. Even if Jun Linyuan is here right now, I'll still tell him I'm going to marry little Feng Wu. Feng Sun smirked. Yu Minji said. Stop smirking. It's been over a year, hasn't it? Feng Sun asked. What? Yu Minji said. It's been a year and a half since Xiaowu came to the imperial capital from the northern border. If your crown prince really likes her, he would have married her already. I wouldn't have had a chance. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. Yu Minji said. I've heard about Zhuo Qinghuan and Hua Wushuang on my way here. They're both your boss Jun's soulmates, aren't they? Feng Sun said. Bullshit. It's not like that at all. Yu Minji said. I don't care. All I know is that when I came out of seclusion, Feng Wu was still available. She's mine. Feng Sun said. She's my sister. Yu Minji said. Hello, brother-in-law. Feng Sun said. Damn you. Feng Wu felt a headache coming on. Can the two of you stop bickering for a moment? She looked at the two of them in resignation. The beautiful lady was cultivating. Luckily, she had set up layer upon layer of formation outside the beautiful lady's room. Otherwise, the beautiful lady would have been driven insane by all the noise. Taking Feng Wu's left hand, Feng Sun said. Xiao Wu, he started it. Get him out of here. Yu Minji took Feng Wu's free hand. Honey, Feng Sun is picking on me. Feng Wu glared at Yu Minji. Shut up. Yu Minji said aggrievedly. All right. Feng Wu said. Stop calling her honey. Yu Minji said. Sure, honey. Feng Wu was genuinely angry now. Glaring at Yu Minji, she said. You. Minji. All right. I won't call you that for the time being. Yu Minji was a wise man, and he surrendered right away. Feng Sun was frustrated. Yu Minji was so shameless. After all, he was the heir to the Dark Dynasty. How could he be so shameless? He was as enthusiastic as a hungry dog when he saw Xiao Wu. What was more, no matter how Xiao Wu scolded him, he would always say yes with a smile, and would do whatever he wanted later. If Boss Jun was shameless enough to do that, he would have married Feng Wu already. It just so happened that Feng Wu seemed to fall for it. Although she had scolded Yu Minji, she still treated him differently. Chapter 35:17, Chapter 35:17. Yuminji 3. Chapter 35:17. Yuminji 3. Feng Sun looked up at the blue sky in resignation. The more he thought about it, the more reluctant he became. He was lost in his thoughts for a while. When he turned around, he saw that Yuminji had been following Feng Wu around and doing everything for her. Feng Wu wanted to water the plants, so he fetched some water. Feng Wu wanted to wash her hands, so he fetched the basin right away. Feng Sun was rendered speechless. How shameless! Feng Sun thought to himself in frustration. But Yuminji was following Xiao Wu everywhere now. As the saying went, a man would change a stubborn woman in the end. What if Xiao Wu was taken away by him? Feng Sun had been so confident in Boss Jun. But when he recalled that it had been over a year since Boss Jun tried to court Feng Wu, he panicked a little. Come out with me. Feng Sun walked up to Yuminji and threw a dirty look at him. Of course, Yuminji wouldn't leave. He wanted to stay with his sweet, adorable girl. However, Feng Sun reached out and dragged him away. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. Finally, she could have some peace. Feng Wu sat down on a chair, rested her hands on the table, and racked her brain. She had heard from Emperor Wu that the ancient pill recipe that could control the mind of a spiritual overlord was in the Hua clan. The pill known as Intelligence Reduction Pill had been in Flower Valley for a long time. Emperor Wu told Feng Wu that the Hua clan wanted to use this ancient pill recipe as Hua Wushuang's dowry. The Intelligence Reduction Pill. If Feng Wu could get her hands on this pill recipe and make some pills, she would be able to solve a lot of problems. That pill recipe had to be with the Hua clan now. But how was she going to get it? She wished that Hua Wushuang was here. Wait. Feng Wu suddenly remembered that she had forgotten about Feng Yi. Hua Wushuang had indeed shown up before, but then, she seemed to have left with Sui Qingxi. She could work on Hua Wushuang. At that thought, Feng Wu headed for the door. As soon as she walked out of the courtyard, she saw Feng Sun and Yuminji crouching under the grape trellis, their heads together and whispering to each other. If she didn't know them well, she would have thought that they were best friends. Han. Yuminji ran happily to Feng Wu's side. But Feng Wu stopped him with a stern look before he could say anything. Ouch. Yuminji lowered his head right away. All right. I won't call you that now. We'll have all the time in the world. Feng Wu couldn't be bothered to argue with him anymore. I need your help with something, Feng Wu told Yuminji. Yuminji gloated right away. If he had a tail, it would be wagging now. He gave Feng Sun a gloating look, as if he had become the chosen one. Feng Sun ignored him. Feng Wu whispered something in Yuminji's ear. Yuminji smacked his own head. Don't worry. I've done everything you asked of me, haven't I? After that, Yuminji darted a look at Feng Sun and marched off. Feng Sun was rendered speechless. He turned to Feng Wu in bewilderment. What did you ask him to do for you? Feng Wu smiled. It's a secret. Feng Sun was displeased. You two have a secret. Feng Wu glanced at him. Can't we have secrets? Feng Sun said in a serious tone. Boss Jun won't like it. Feng Wu almost lost her temper at Feng Sun's words. Chapter 35:18 Chapter 35:18. Yuminji 4? Chapter 35:18. Yuminji 4. Your boss Jun will be unhappy? Why should I care how unhappy he is? I can't have friends because he's unhappy. Feng Sun said. That's not what I meant. Feng Wu said. My friend came all the way here to protect me when he heard that I was in trouble. I know you don't care, but I appreciate it. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. Feng Wu asked. Where's your boss Jun now? Feng Sun didn't know what to say. Feng Wu said. Apart from having an affair with Hua Wushuang, what else did he do? Feng Sun said. But Hua. Boss Jun wasn't the one who had created that rumor. Feng Wu smirked. Isn't Hua Wushuang your boss Jun's idea? Why is he attracting girls all the time? After Zhuo Qingwan, there's Hua Wushuang. What? Does he want to have as many women as his father does? Feng Sun felt a headache coming on. He had no idea that his sister could be so jealous. I can't argue with you, but from what I know about Boss Jun, he has to be absent for a reason. But you really shouldn't get too close to Yuminji. It's for Yuminji's own good. You know, Boss Jun used to kill people without batting an eyelash. He only became a normal person because of you. Do you realize he can kill Yuminji in a fit of rage? Feng Wu threw a dirty look at Feng Sun. Yuminji is my friend. Feng Sun said, Alright. Boss Jun is your friend as well, isn't he? Feng Wu asked. What do you think? Feng Sun ran off in frustration. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself if he stayed here any longer. Crossing her hands behind her back, Feng Wu walked out of the courtyard and spotted someone. Feng Yanfeng. Her uncle. Feng Wu stared at Feng Yanfeng with an indifferent look on her face. Feng Wu had always had conflicted feelings toward that family. Feng Yanfeng had been very nice to her when she was the little genius, but after her true phoenix blood was destroyed, come to think of it, Feng Yanfeng's family had something to do with it. Feng Yanfeng cleared his throat. I haven't thanked you for what happened to E. Feng Wu stared at Feng Yanfeng and said indifferently, I'm doing this for myself. The reputation of the Feng clan's daughters will be ruined, and I'll be incriminated. Feng Yanfeng glanced at Feng Wu. What reputation? If she really cared about her reputation, she would have stood up for herself when they tried to slander her. Anyway, I owe you one, said Feng Yanfeng earnestly. Feng Wu said indifferently, I destroyed Zhou Qinghuan's true phoenix blood. Feng Yanfeng stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. Feng Wu said, she destroyed my true phoenix blood back then, so it's only fair that I destroy hers now. Feng Yanfeng said, aren't you afraid that the Zhou family? Feng Wu smiled. The Zhou family isn't the only one. Feng Yanfeng asked, what do you mean? Feng Wu said indifferently, the Firmament Palace has put a price on my head. All spiritual overlords in the world can hunt me down. Feng Yanfeng almost fell to the ground. He managed to remain standing, but he was scared out of his wits. Are you kidding me? Feng Wu said earnestly. I'm not joking. Chapter 3519 Chapter 3519 Love Rival 1 Chapter 3519 Love Rival 1 Feng Yanfeng said. But, Feng Wu said, Zhou Qinghuan was the culprit who destroyed my true phoenix blood. So who was the accomplice? For example, who lured me out of the Feng clan and told the Zhou family about me? Feng Yanfeng blanched. It was Feng Lu. Feng Wu said, I know that Feng Lu is involved, but since she's dead, we can forget about what happened back then. As for the people who are still alive, Feng Yanfeng's face turned pale again. Feng Wu glanced at him. I'll see how they react when all the spiritual overlords are after me. After that, Feng Wu walked out. She was very fast and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Frightened by Feng Wu, Feng Yanfeng ran back to his courtyard after Feng Wu left. This world was too terrifying. Feng Yanfeng announced that his family was in seclusion, and no one was allowed to leave the yard, let alone set foot in Fallen Star Yard anytime soon. Feng Wu knew Feng Yanfeng was terrified. She smiled when she saw Feng Yanfeng lock his family up in their own courtyard. Without the people from the main branch loitering around, the success rate of her next plan would be much higher. It didn't take long for Yuminji to return, followed by Hua Wushuang. Don't run. Stop right there. Hua Wushuang pointed her sword at Yuminji. Yuminji made a face at Hua Wushuang as he ran. Ugly girl. How dare you compare yourself to Xiao Wu? How dare you? Feng Wu finally understood why Hua Wushuang was so mad at Yuminji. Yuminji was still gloating as he ran. I'm a spiritual overlord. Do you think you can catch up with me? Huh? Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. Yuminji was like a 4-year-old. Hua Wushuang was furious. She couldn't catch up with Yuminji, but she saw Feng Wu. She was enraged when she saw her love rival. Hua Wushuang didn't chase after Yuminji anymore. She jumped off the wall and stood in front of Feng Wu. At this moment, the two of them were standing at the entrance of the Feng clan. It was the place where everyone had gathered to watch Li Chaopan's incident the day before. The Feng clan used to be very prosperous, so the entire street was the family's property. The road at the entrance was 100 meters wide, which was why it could accommodate so many people. Not far from the entrance of the street, there were all kinds of shops. It was a bustling scene. Hence, when Hua Wuxuang and Feng Wu stood opposite each other, they attracted a lot of attention. Everyone stopped and looked at them. Hua Wuxuang stared at Feng Wu. "Feng Wu, what are you doing?" Feng Wu gave her a half smile. "Interesting. Yesterday, Duke Li's family came to pick on us. And now it's the Hua family's turn. Do you all think we'll just take it without fighting back?" For a moment, everyone's attention was on Hua Wuxuang. Hua Wuxuang saw herself as a pure and innocent fairy. She couldn't stand being stared at by so many people. She stared at Feng Wu. "Hand over you Minji or I'll kill you." Feng Wu gave her a half smile. "That's interesting. Yu Minji is a spiritual overlord. Do you think I can order him around? Miss Hua, do you really have no idea how powerful he is?" Hua Wuxuang was stumped by Feng Wu's words. How could she not know? She had only seen how obedient Yu Minji was to Feng Wu, and that was why. "All right, since you won't hand Yu Minji over, you can take the consequence yourself." Feng Wu asked, "Is that so?" Chapter 3520, Chapter 3520, Love Rival 2. Chapter 3520, Love Rival 2. Hua Wuxuang said, "Feng Wu, I want to challenge you. Now." Feng Wu gave her an indifferent look. "What if I don't accept it?" Hua Wuxuang said, "Are you scared?" Feng Wu said, "I won't accept an unknown challenge. If I accept anyone's challenge, I'll be too busy to have any time to cultivate. So, you have to give me a reason." Hua Wuxuang said, "Because of the Crown Prince." Feng Wu looked at her indifferently. "Jun Linyuan? What about him? How dare she call His Royal Highness by his name?" Hua Wuxuang had already regarded Jun Linyuan as her husband. Hence, she couldn't stand Feng Wu's way of addressing him. "Do you really not know, or are you faking it?" Hua Wuxuang stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said calmly, "What are you talking about?" Hua Wuxuang didn't say anything. Instead, she raised her right arm and showed the two dragon and phoenix jade bracelets on her wrist. The dragon and phoenix jade bracelet is the symbol of a daughter-in-law of the royal family and the future crown prince consort. Hua Wuxuang lowered her voice and whispered in Feng Wu's ear. It was a show-off and a provocation. After that, Hua Wuxuang pulled away from Feng Wu and smiled at her. "Do you know the difference between us now?" Feng Wu asked. "So, why are you here today?" Hua Wuxuang. "To teach you a lesson." Feng Wu was confused. "Teach me a lesson?" Hua Wuxuang said, "I know you knew the crown prince before I did, and that he treats you differently. I even know that you were once engaged. So don't worry. I won't stop you from marrying His Royal Highness, even if it's to suit His Royal Highness's wishes." Feng Wu looked at Hua Wuxuang, as if she was looking at a retard. Hua Wuxuang glanced at Feng Wu arrogantly. "It's just that I'll be the crown prince consort, and you'll just be the concubine." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Nearby, Yu Minji was speechless. The onlookers further away were all dumbfounded. So, today's battle was between the crown prince's future wife and his future concubine. Wait, didn't they say that Feng Wu is the future crown prince's consort? Can't you tell? That Miss Hua has replaced her. I heard that the Hua family is from the Flower Valley, one of the 9 major clans. They're very well connected and have a lot of capable cultivators. The Feng clan isn't what it used to be, so it's possible that Miss Feng is no longer a consort and is replaced by Miss Hua. Hua Wuxuang stared at Feng Wu. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Hua Wuxuang had a granny with her, and she was Aunt Shi, who was Hua Wuxuang's personal guard arranged by Mrs. Hua. Aunt Shi stared at Feng Wu with a grim look on her face. "Do you understand what Miss Hua is saying?" Feng Wu looked at Hua Wuxuang and sighed. "So what on earth do you want?" Hua Wuxuang stared at Feng Wu. "I'll defeat you fair and square, and let everyone know that I'm better than you. I deserve to be the crown prince's wife." Feng Wu looked into her eyes. "You look so aloof yourself, but why are you so shameless when it comes to men? Even Zhuo Qingwan isn't your match in that aspect. You're dead." Hua Wuxuang couldn't stand it when Feng Wu taunted her. She had lowered her voice so that only Feng Wu could hear her. Chapter 3521. Chapter 3521. Love Rival 3. Chapter 3521. Love Rival 3. Since the others couldn't hear her, they didn't know what she really was like. It seemed that her grandmother was right. She had to defeat Feng Wu. Without another word, Hua Wushuang shot a streak of spiritual essence at Feng Wu. She was already a peak level 4 spiritual king, and she believed Feng Wu was only a junior one. Therefore, Hua Wushuang was confident that she could crush Feng Wu with one strike. But Feng Wu, on the other hand, remained where she was. When the spiritual essence reached Feng Wu, she pressed her palms together and pushed forward. She struck back at Hua Wushuang. Hua Wushuang blanched. She could sense the fluctuation of spiritual essence. Wasn't Feng Wu a junior level 4 spiritual king? How? Thump! Feng Wu hit Hua Wushuang in the stomach, and the latter flew backward. She flew toward Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu had set up a formation in Fallen Star Yard, and normal people shouldn't have been able to get in. However, for some unknown reason, Hua Wushuang had fallen in. And that she frowned. Without another word, she struck out at Feng Wu. However, Yu Minji had blocked her way. Hey, old hag, the two girls are fighting. Why are you getting involved? Elder. One, come here. Yu Minji let his elder fight Aunt Shi. As soon as they exchanged blows, Yu Minji realized that Aunt Shi was far more capable than he was. Feng Wu darted a look at Yu Minji, who nodded. Feng Wu didn't make any unnecessary moves. Instead, she charged at Fallen Star Yard and shouted, Hua Wushuang, where are you going? Get up and fight again. Immediately after that, the sound of fighting came from inside. But in fact, in Fallen Star Yard, Hua Wushuang lay on the ground and couldn't get up, because Feng Wu was stepping on her. She stared at Feng Wu in disbelief, and couldn't understand why. How did this happen? Why? She had been defeated with one strike. Why was Feng Wu so much better than her? Your capability. Hua Wushuang gritted her teeth and stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu glanced at her. Didn't anyone tell you that I was only temporarily reduced to a level 4 spiritual king? Hua Wushuang said, temporarily. Feng Wu said, that's right. I became a level 6 spiritual king last night. Do you have a problem with that? Hua Wushuang said, you're a level 6 spiritual king. Feng Wu smiled. Yes, that's right. But it's too late to tell you now. You need to do something for me. What did she need? Before Hua Wushuang could ask anything, Feng Wu knocked her out. When Hua Wushuang woke up again, she had no idea that someone had changed her clothes. She had changed into Feng Wu's clothes, Feng Wu's dress, Feng Wu's outfit, and Feng Wu's face. As for Feng Wu herself, she had become Hua Wushuang. I've fed her the energy dissipating potion. She won't be able to activate her spiritual essence for a while. Keep an eye on her, Feng Wu told Chaoga and Qiuling. Both of them were shocked by Feng Wu's decision. Luckily, they were used to it and soon accepted it. With the truth serum, Hua Wushuang spat out everything she didn't want to say. Chapter 3522. Chapter 3522. Love Rival 4. Chapter 3522. Love Rival 4. I'll be back soon, Feng Wu reminded her friends before Aunt Shi tried to get in again. The next second, Miss Hua. Aunt Shi picked up Feng Wu, who was Hua Wushuang in her eyes. Miss, are you all right? Feng Wu shook her head, indicating that she was all right. However, Aunt Shi saw the big footprints on her mistress's chest, and the swelling on her face. How could she be all right? Let's go back first. After all, this is her family's territory. Feng Wu reminded Aunt Shi in a low voice. Aunt Shi was thinking about the same thing, so she led Feng Wu away, and soon disappeared out of sight. Did you injure Feng Wu? When Aunt Shi rushed in, she saw someone lying on the ground. It had to be Feng Wu. Feng Wu nodded. I've injured her, but I'm badly injured as well. I'll need some time to recover. Seeing that the bracelets on Feng Wu's wrist weren't broken, Aunt Shi let out a breath of relief. Miss, you didn't have to do it now. You'll have plenty of opportunities in the future. You'll be the crown prince's wife, and she'll be a concubine. Wouldn't it be better to do whatever you want to her then? Feng Wu feigned an irritated look. I just don't like her. And she sighed. Well, at least you've vented your anger. I'm afraid your grandmother will make you go into seclusion later. Feng Wu didn't speak. Soon they were back at the Hua Manor. The manor was luxuriously decorated, and there were hundreds of pots of chrysanthemums in the courtyard. It looked refreshing and elegant. Tomorrow was Mrs. Hua's birthday, and it was going to be a chance for the Hua family to get back into the upper class of the imperial capital. Moreover, the Empress Dowager had made that promise for the family, so Mrs. Hua took it very seriously. Feng Wu had been very focused since she entered the manor, fearing that she might make a mistake and arouse suspicion. And she stared at Feng Wu. Miss, are you badly injured? Feng Wu said, I'm all right. And she said, Miss, your heart is racing. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. As expected, all the members of these family clans were very sharp, even Aunt Shi. Luckily, Feng Wu had imitated Hua Wushuang well, or Aunt Shi would have seen through her. Aunt Shi shook her head when she saw how Feng Wu put a hand on her chest all the time. Miss, please go cultivate. I'm going to see Mrs. Hua. She left before Feng Wu could say another word. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She didn't know where to go. She wasn't the real Hua Wushuang, so she had no idea where she lived or cultivated. Just then she heard a voice. Sister Wushuang, what's wrong? Why are your clothes dirty? It was Hua Wuyu, the girl from the second branch of the Hua family. Feng Wu hadn't met her before and didn't know her name. Sister Wushuang? Hua Wuyu looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. What's wrong? Feng Wu put a hand on her chest. Ahem. I just had a fight. I'm all right. She didn't look all right. Wuyu immediately put her arm around Feng Wii. Sister Wushuang, let me help you. Lotus Pavilion you're cultivating in is a little far from here, but the spiritual essence there is very dense. It'll be very helpful for your recovery. Feng Wu nodded. Thank you. Hua Wuyu was surprised. Her sister had always been aloof and never showed her ordinary sisters any respect. Why? Chapter 3523. Chapter 3523. Blood Source Crystal 1. Chapter 3523. Blood Source Crystal 1. Hua Wuyu was puzzled, and her expression changed a little. As smart as Feng Wu was, she was able to detect even the tiniest change in Hua Wuyu's expression. She soon came up with a plan. Feng Wu remembered that there was another girl in the Hua family, and she was Hua Wuji, the daughter of the second branch of the family. Hua Wuji was as talented as Hua Wushuang, but she had been severely injured in her early years, and was half disfigured. Hence Mrs. Hua put all her effort into Hua Wushuang. The Hua family spared no effort in cultivating Hua Wushuang, with all the cultivation techniques and resources they had. As for Hua Wuji, she seemed to have been abandoned. Feng Wu learned about it when she interrogated Hua Wushuang with the truth serum. Time was of the essence, so Feng Wu only knew a little. She didn't know the details. Feng Wu asked involuntarily, Where's Wuji? Hua Wuji was the third daughter of her generation in the Hua clan. She and Hua Wuyu were sisters. Hua Wuyu blanched at the mention of her sister, and forced a smile. My sister is cultivating in seclusion. Feng Wu said, Grandma's birthday is coming, but she's still in seclusion. Hua Wuyu said, My sister said she would come out in advance. Feng Wu said, Bring her to me when she's out. Hua Wuyu looked nervously at Feng Wu. Feng Wu asked, What? Do you have a problem with that? She sounded so arrogant. Feng Wu knew perfectly well that Hua Wushuang was as arrogant as a peacock to those she knew. As expected, Hua Wuyu wasn't surprised by Feng Wu's attitude. That was how arrogant Hua Wushuang always had been. Sister Wushuang, here's your cultivation room. Hua Wuyu helped Feng Wu inside, and tried to run away. However, Feng Wu frowned a little. Go get me some spirit stones. Nua Vuyu 100 Kuet Rung Wu. Disker Wasnuang. Yua Ri Siani only one know has the key to the treasure room. Didn't you say last time that Grandma gave you the key? Feng Wu was greatly surprised. Hua Wushuang must be so important to these people. She even had the key to the treasure room. Luckily, Feng Wu was a meticulous person. When she caught Hua Wushuang earlier, She took everything off her body, including the dragon phoenix bracelets. Of course, she had the key that Hua Wuyu was talking about. Feng Wu took out her key and tossed it to Hua Wuyu. Be quick about it. Yes. Hua Wuyu didn't dare to delay. Holding the key with both hands, she turned around and headed for the door. Feng Wu walked out of the training room, after Hua Wuyu was a few hundred meters away. Feng Wu had no idea where the room was, nor did she know how to open it. Hence, she decided to follow Hua Wuyu. As expected, when Hua Wuyu opened the door to the treasure room, she sensed a shadow next to her. Turning around, she saw that it was her sister. Sister Wushuang, why are you here? Aren't you badly injured? Feng Wu glanced at her in an arrogant manner. Do you know what's suitable for my recovery? Hua Wuyu said, well, blood-clotting pills? Top-grade spiritual stones? Or blood source crystals? The name popped into Feng Wu's head, and her stomach lurched. Feng Wu had quite a few spirit stones, be they low-grade, medium-grade, or top-grade. Chapter 3524. Chapter 3524. Blood Source Crystal 2. Chapter 3524. Blood Source Crystal 2. Feng Wu had all kinds of spirit stones and all types of pills. But she didn't have any blood source crystals. Feng Wu had heard about blood source crystals before, and knew that they could greatly benefit one's cultivation. However, the blood source crystal mine was very rare, and only one or two would show up every now and then in the central and western region, where Flower Valley was. As soon as they appeared, they would be bought off. Hence, blood source crystals weren't available on the market. Feng Wu didn't have any either. Feng Wu's eyes lit up when she heard that. Could there be blood source crystals in the valley? If that was the case, she would be able to recover very quickly. Not only that, but she had also made great progress. Feng Wu had asked Feng Sun to gather a lot of ingredients from the royal vault, and was going to refine the pill. If she could find some blood source crystals now. Feng Wu's eyes lit up at that thought. But she only glanced at Hua Wuyu. I see that you really don't know. After that, Feng Wu entered the treasure room first. Hua Wuyu didn't know whether to go in or not. Feng Wu wasn't familiar with this place, and she needed Hua Wuyu's cover. Hence she said indifferently, come with me. Hua Wuyu couldn't ask for more. Feng Wu walked in to find an old steward waiting for her. The old steward had a hunched back and a stern look on his face. The wrinkles on his face looked like they had been sculpted. Miss Wushuang. He greeted Feng Wu, but acted as if he didn't see Hua Wuyu. Instead, Hua Wuyu greeted him. Steward Zhao, my sister is injured and I'm here to fetch something. Seeing Feng Wu, Steward Zhao frowned a little. Miss Wushuang, why are you injured? Is it serious? What do you need? Do you have a note from the accounting office? Does it have your grandmother's seal? It turned out that to get an object from the room, the accounting office had to write a note first before the old lady stamped it. Only then could one have permission. Ahem. Hua Wushuang seemed to be badly injured and glanced at Hua Wuyu. Hua Wuyu straightened her back. Steward Zhao, Sister Wushuang has the key to the room, and Grandma has given her full authority over it. Please don't make fun of us. My sister doesn't need Grandma's seal. Other people go to my sister for her seal when they need something from the treasure room. Steward Zhao smiled. I almost forgot. Miss Wuyu, please forgive me. Feng Wu let out a breath of relief. Luckily, Hua Wuyu had come with Feng Wu today. Feng Wu didn't know about all the petty rules of the Hua family. Steward Zhao would have seen through her plan if she didn't give the right answer. As a matter of fact, she wondered if Steward Zhao had seen through his plan. Why did he try to mislead her? Feng Wu was suspicious, but she didn't let it show. Steward Zhao asked Feng Wu, Miss Wushuang, what do you need? Feng Wu asked, what do you think I should get? Steward Zhao said, I have something nice to recommend to you. Please follow me. Feng Wu's stomach lurched and she said indifferently, all right. Steward Zhao turned to Hua Wuyu. Miss Wuyu, please leave. Hua Wuyu thought that Steward Zhao was biased toward Hua Wushuang, so she left in the end despite her reluctance. Chapter 3525. Chapter 3525. Blood Source Crystal 3. Chapter 3525 Blood Source Crystal 3. Steward Zhao welcomed Feng Wu in. In the treasure room. The room was 200 m to 300 m in diameter, and there were rows of log-colored shelves in the middle. They were filled with boxes of all shapes and sizes. Around the shelves were wooden chests. The wooden chests were of the same size and were neatly arranged. Steward Zhao stayed by Feng Wu's side the whole time and said, "Miss Wushuang, since you're injured, of course, you should have the coagulation pills and elixirs. This way, please." However, he didn't get to finish his sentence. Thump. Thud. Feng Wu struck out. It had never occurred to Steward Zhao that the other party would make the first move. He had planned to ensnare before activating a mechanism to trap her. He didn't expect her to be so alarmed and strike first. "Aren't you a level 4 spiritual king?" Steward Zhao turned around and glared at Feng Wu. He was stabbed in the chest. The blade penetrated her chest, and blood dripped down from the tip of the sword. "Who on earth are you? Where's the real Miss Wushuang?" Steward Zhao glared at Feng Wu. He slowly walked back and leaned against the wall. However, Feng Wu dragged him away first. "Do you want to sound the alarm?" "Steward Zhao, this was bound to happen when you became so confident in yourself. You didn't lose to me. You lost your arrogance. As a matter of fact, you've been convinced since the first time you saw me that I'm not the real Hua Wushuang, haven't you?" Feng Wu smiled at Steward Zhao. Steward Zhao's eyes flickered. That was right. As soon as he saw Feng Wu, Steward Zhao knew that she wasn't Hua Wushuang. Hence, he sent Hua Wuyu away on purpose and led Feng Wu into the vault. There were alarms and secret traps in the vault. So Steward Zhao decided to lock Feng Wu up and interrogate her. However, he was too late. Despite his capability, he was severely injured by Feng Wu's concentrated attack. Feng Wu was an expert in using poison, and once she got her hands on Steward Zhao, he would have no chance to fight back. When Steward Zhao tried to set off the alarm on the wall, Feng Wu saw that it was a book. Feng Wu didn't have time to waste on Steward Zhao, so she sprinkled the truth powder on him. Soon Steward Zhao's eyes became hazy. "The first thing Miss Wushuang says when she comes here is always if we have anything new. She always asks for a booklet instead of coming in. That was why I knew something wasn't right when I saw you, but I wasn't very sure. So, I was going to catch you before informing Mrs. Hua. That way, I would have made a great contribution. If I told the others would get a share of the credit. But I didn't expect you to be so perceptive. You saw that I was suspicious of you." "How did you know I was suspecting you?" Steward Zhao stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled. "You avoided my eyes on purpose, fearing that I might notice something wrong. Wasn't that obvious?" Steward Zhao heaved a long sigh. "Miss Wushuang isn't as acute as you are. Where is she now?" Feng Wu said indifferently, "Don't worry. Her life isn't in danger for the time being, but yours is." Steward Zhao stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gave him a half-smile. "Steward Zhao, are you still trying to set me up?" Chapter 3526. Chapter 3526. Blood Source Crystal 4. Chapter 3526. Blood Source Crystal 4. Feng Wu said, "Steward Zhao, instead of setting me up, why don't you think about where the rest of the blood source crystals are?" Feng Wu had already walked around the room. To Feng Wu, who had visited the royal vault before, the things in the Hua family's vault weren't good enough to impress her. There were some on the shelf as well, but Feng Wu only picked out one. The blood crystal was the size of a pigeon egg, and it was giving off a dense spiritual essence. Feng Wu thought to herself, such a small stone has the amount of spiritual essence of 10,000 top-grade spiritual stones, which shows how dense the spiritual essence is in blood source crystals. Feng Wu waved the blood crystal in front of Steward Zhao. Steward Zhao shook his head. "There's only one blood source crystal." Feng Wu smiled. "I think I used too little truth serum just then. Steward Zhao, you're awake again. Please take some more." Feng Wu had given Steward Zhao the truth powder, which wasn't potent enough, so she used the truth serum the second time around. Feng Wu had sealed off Steward Zhao's acupoints, rendering him immobile. Moreover, he had been severely injured, so he had no choice but to let Feng Wu do whatever she wanted. Steward Zhao's face went ghastly pale after he took the potion. It was a potion specifically attacking one's mind. After being drugged twice in a row, Steward Zhao was in a trance-like state, and he was drooling again. He couldn't control himself anymore. Feng Wu crouched down in front of him and smiled. Go ahead. Do you have any more blood source crystals in this vault? Steward Zhao didn't say anything, but he pointed at the ground a short distance away. The floor was smooth and spotless without any markings. It looked so ordinary that no one would notice anything unusual about it. Feng Wu went up to that spot and tapped the ground with her fingers. It was indeed hollow. That was to say, there really was something beneath. Now that she knew what was down there, the trap wouldn't be able to stop her anymore. She was an expert in this field. Feng Wu deactivated the mechanism in less than a minute. A platform of about 1 square meter slowly rose. There was a black brocade box on the platform. The brocade box was locked with inscriptions. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder at Steward Zhao, who had regained some of his senses. Seeing the black brocade box Feng Wu took out, he looked enraged. However, he smirked when he saw that Feng Wu hadn't touched the inscription lock. That's an inscription lock. Any inscription master below level 8 can't open it. If you destroy it by force, the brocade box will explode, and the explosion will alarm the people outside. There's more. The brocade box is stuck to the platform, which is made from obsidian. No metal can break it, so I'll be honest with you. Inside the brocade box are the blood source crystals, and a lot of them. It's specially prepared for Miss Wushuang, so that she can break through to the spiritual overlord stage. And you'll never get it. Steward Zhao stared at Feng Wu with a malicious look in his eyes. You only have 2 options now. One is to leave now, and the other is to blow up the box. Just then something strange happened. He saw Feng Wu take a strange pen out of her chest pocket and began to draw on the inscription lock. Chapter 3527. Chapter 3527. Successful Breakthrough 1. Chapter 3527. Successful Breakthrough 1. The steward gave Feng Wu a strange look, wondering what she was up to. In any case, the inscription lock on the black wooden box couldn't be opened unless one was a level 8 inscription master or above, and Steward Zhao would never believe that Feng Wu was such a master. However, there was a soft click. This sound seemed to be specially made to mock Steward Zhao. Feng Wu had unlocked the inscription lock, which he had thought she would never open. You. The steward watched as Feng Wu took out 5 blood source crystals from the box. Feng Wu frowned. Why are there only 5? Steward Zhao was speechless. Isn't 5 enough? Don't you know how valuable blood source crystals are? Do you know how many there are in the entire Hua clan? Only 5. Feng Wu said, That's indeed not much. Where can I find more? Steward Zhao was so infuriated by Feng Wu that he was almost out of breath. Feng Wu said, This is only one of your treasure rooms, right? Where are the others? Steward Zhao said, You. The steward stopped breathing from his anger. Although he was already seriously injured, he died from anger in the end. Feng Wu looked at him in resignation, trying to figure out what to do with the dead body. Seeing the rows of wooden boxes, Feng Wu grabbed the innermost one. It still had an inscription lock. However, this lock didn't need a level 8 inscription master. A level 7 one could open it. Feng Wu unlocked the box, only to find that it was filled with powdered explosives. There were barrels of them. Each barrel weighed 5 kilos, and there were 10 barrels in a box. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. She opened a sealed barrel and felt the powder with her fingers. She realized that it was of superior quality. If explosive powder of this level was powerful enough, it could injure a junior spiritual overlord. How could Feng Wu let go of such good stuff? Hence, she emptied the barrels of explosives and stuffed them all into her storage bag before throwing Steward Zhao into the box. After sealing the wooden box with an inscription lock, Feng Wu looked around. There was an entire row of boxes by the side. Could these boxes be? Feng Wu's eyes lit up. The Hua family was already very cautious. Every box was carefully sealed with an inscription lock, but Feng Wu was a great inscription master. Soon, she opened all the boxes, which were all filled with powdered explosives. Needless to say, she would take them all. She emptied all the boxes. It was impossible to tell how long the Hua family had been accumulating the powder in the box, or what they had prepared for it. However, Feng Wu had taken all of it. As for the wooden boxes on the shelf, Feng Wu would be staying with the Hua family for a few days, so she wouldn't touch them for the time being. After that, Feng Wu walked out of the room. As for Steward Zhao, Feng Wu had made up a good excuse for his disappearance. That night, someone barged into the Hua family's house at night. When they passed by the treasure room, they were discovered by Steward Zhao, who then rushed out. From then on, no one saw Steward Zhao again. That was a story for another day. As for Feng Wu, she went back to her room and started refining the blood source crystals. The blood source crystals would only be effective when she absorbed the energy in them. Chapter 3528. Chapter 3528. Successful Breakthrough 2. Chapter 3528. Successful Breakthrough 2. Feng Wu cultivated in the cultivation room. Soon she succeeded in her breakthrough. Feng Wu had fallen from a peak level 6 spiritual king to a level 4-1 after saving Bao Air. Now that she had the blood source crystals, she continued to improve. With the help of the blood source crystals, Feng Wu became a level 7 spiritual king. Seeing that it was already late at night, Feng Wu went out and pretended to be Steward Zhao, then ran back to the cultivation room. She had to find a reason for Steward Zhao to go missing and shift the blame to another family. This was Feng Wu's plan, and she wouldn't use it until her plan was fully implemented. If Steward Zhao knew that Feng Wu was going to use him as a pawn after he died, he probably would jump out of the box in anger. Feng Wu hadn't sat down for long when someone kicked the door open. She looked up and saw 2 girls outside. The girl walking in front was dressed in a purple dress. She looked very arrogant, and there was a trace of resentment in her eyes. Behind her was Hua Wuyu, whom Feng Wu had met earlier. Sister Wushuang, I've brought Sister Wuji. Please be nice to each other. Don't quarrel. With that, Hua Wuyu ran off like a little rabbit, leaving Feng Wu and Hua Wuji alone in the room. Hua Wuji was just as pretty as Hua Wushuang, but there was an obvious scar on her cheek. It was very obvious, and made her look ferocious and terrifying. Hua Wuji stared at Hua Wushuang. Did you want to talk to me? Feng Wu smiled. Yes. One could tell that Hua Wuji was very unfriendly toward Hua Wushuang to the point of being hostile. She sat down on the chair and glanced at Hua Wushuang arrogantly. I want to hear what our most promising Mississippi Wushuang has to say. Feng Wu chose Hua Wuji because she wanted to start internal strife in the Hua family. She played Hua Wushuang's part so that everyone would hate her. Hence, Feng Wu glanced at Hua Wuji and spoke in an even more arrogant tone than Hua Wuji. Wuji, how dare you talk to me like that? Feng Wu raised her eyebrows and looked down at Hua Wuji. Hua Wuji was furious. Hua Wushuang, is this how you talk to me? Hua Wuji stood up instantly and glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu liked how things were going. She was secretly delighted, but she didn't show it on her face. Instead, she smirked. What? I'm going to marry the crown prince and become the crown prince's wife. Tell me, how should I speak to you? Hua Wuji's expression became even uglier, and she threatened Feng Wu. Wushuang, you're really smug. Feng Wu smiled. Aren't you going to give me your blessing? Hua Wuji said. Of course I'll give you my blessings, my dear sister. With that, Hua Wuji slammed the door and left. You're so mean. You deliberately tried to piss her off. After Hua Wuji stormed out, Little Phoenix stuck its head out of Feng Wu's space and said curiously. Feng Wu said, she won't take action unless I piss her off. Little Phoenix urged Feng Wu. What are you trying to do now? Tell me now. I can tell that someone is going to be in trouble. Chapter 3529. Chapter 3529. Successful Breakthrough 3. Chapter 3529. Successful Breakthrough 3. Feng Wu said, I have a plan. If the Hua family doesn't fall into chaos, I'll become your pupil. Little Phoenix said, there are so many people after you. Why are you attacking the Hua family first? Feng Wu only smiled. The Hua family isn't the only one I'm going to attack this time. Not just the Hua family. Who else? Little Phoenix scratched its head, confused. Also, it didn't understand why Feng Wu had provoked Hua Wuji on purpose. Feng Wu said, send Chaoga a message for me and tell her. Curious, Little Phoenix did whatever Feng Wu told it to do. After it returned, Little Phoenix couldn't help but ask Feng Wu, when will the answer be revealed? Feng Wu said, tomorrow. Little Phoenix said, it's that old witch's birthday tomorrow. Many people will come. Feng Wu said, I'm counting on it. The more onlookers, the better. After all, it's Hua Wushuang's big day. Little Phoenix said, why don't you look happy? Feng Wu mumbled to herself. Do you think Jun Linyuan will blame me for making this decision for him? Feng Wu mumbled to herself. Do you think Jun Linyuan will blame me for making this decision for him? Little Phoenix asked, what? Feng Wu said, if Hua Wushuang doesn't become his fiancé, do you think he'll blame me? Little Phoenix poked Feng Wu in the forehead. Are you stupid? It's so obvious that he likes you. Can't you tell? Feng Wu's depressed face lit up. Really? Little Phoenix glanced at Feng Wu and suddenly said, before your master wakes up, you'd better not. Seeing that Little Phoenix had stopped mid-sentence, Feng Wu frowned. I'd better not what? Little Phoenix said, you'd better not fall in love with anyone else. Feng Wu said, what do you mean? Who would I fall in love with? Jun Linyuan. That's impossible. Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu as if she was a retard. It's over. Although she says that she doesn't like him, she's probably already. Little Phoenix said, if you get too close to Jun Linyuan, he'll definitely notice your master. When that happens, you have to know that master was once the master of the continent. Who wouldn't want his legacy? Jun Linyuan will be a threat to master. It was obvious that Little Phoenix didn't want Feng Wu to be with Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu said stubbornly, of course I know that. That's why I won't be with Jun Linyuan. Don't worry. Don't you believe me? Little Phoenix murmured something. Feng Wu asked, what did you say? Little Phoenix said, nothing. Just remember what you said today. As for the 12 trials of love, you should complete them, but don't fall in love for real. Feng Wu poked it in the head impatiently. I know. You're so nosy. Why did Little Phoenix's serious warning make her feel so uncomfortable? Feng Wu ignored the discomfort and focused on the matter at hand. Little Phoenix knew it wasn't a good idea to push Feng Wu too hard, so it dashed off. I'll see if your plan is working. Little Phoenix was as fast as lightning. It had recently learned how to be invisible, so no one could find it or do anything to it in the Hua clan. Little Phoenix saw that Hua Wuji was fuming in her room. At that moment her best friend, Dugu Yamo of the Dugu family, came to see her. Chapter 3530, Chapter 3530, Successful Breakthrough 4. Chapter 3530, Successful Breakthrough 4. What? Can my face really be treated? Hua Wuji grabbed Dugu Yamo. Are you serious? You're not lying to me, are you? Yamo, do you know how many times I've had hope over the years, but in the end, I've always been disappointed. Hua Wuji burst into tears. Do you know who hurt my face? It was Hua Wushuang. I've asked around. It was her. Back then, I was prettier and more talented than her. She secretly attacked me and injured my face. From then on, my importance in the family plummeted. Hua Wushuang, who was originally inferior to me, had my grandma's favor. Dugu Yamo was confused. Wait, why is your appearance related to your cultivation? Hua Wuji said, my family is an exception. We're raised to be the crown prince's future wife, so appearance is the most important thing. Dugu Yamo said, what? Your family? Hua Wuji said, that's right. That's how we raised our daughters in the first place. Even if Feng Wu hadn't been framed by the Zhou family, our grandma would have killed her in the end. In fact, she's already a dead woman now. Dugu Yamo said, but How can your grandmother be so sure that one of you will marry the crown prince? Duguyamo was a little scared at the thought of how she used to have a crush on the crown prince. Hua Wuji said, "Our grandma has her own ways of bewitching the Empress Dowager. Don't worry. The Empress Dowager is a fool. She's been played by our grandma. Grandma can lie to her however she wants, but the Empress Dowager still trusts her." Duguyamo said, "That was a bold thing to say." Hua Wuji said, "I only dare to say this in front of you. Do you think I dare to mention it in front of others? By the way, you mentioned cream just now. Do you really have it?" Duguyamo said, "I do have it. I bought it from someone. It'll regain your looks after you use it." Duguyamo then took out a small white jade box. Inside was a cream that was as clear as snow and had a faint fragrance. "It'll be effective shortly after you put it on." Duguyamo looked at Hua Wuji. "I spent a lot of money to buy it. I've kept it for myself. If it doesn't work on you, I can't do anything about it." Hua Wuji, "This is a supreme level cream, isn't it?" Duguyamo nodded. "Of course." Hua Wuji said, "You know a supreme level medicine refiner." Duguyamo thought to herself, "What about it? That person is actually a semi-divine medicine refiner, but a supreme level cream is less obvious." However, she didn't say anything in the end. She only said to Hua Wuji, "The person I know works for that medicine refiner. I didn't just buy the cream. Look, there are other medicinal powders and potions." Duguyamo took out a small box from her pocket and showed it to Hua Wuji. "This is a sleeping potion. This is a fragrance elixir. Here's a breakthrough pill. And this is a illusory fragrance pill. After using it, it's as if you're ascending. You'll feel like you're floating." At this moment, Hua Wuji had already applied the cream to her face and was waiting for the medicine to take effect. She said, "Actually, Hua Wushuang is already a semi-supreme level medicine refiner. She only knows how to deal with me with her medicine. When my face recovers, I'll definitely teach her a lesson." Chapter 35-31 Chapter 35-31 What does she want? Chapter 35-31 What does she want? After applying the cream, Hua Wuji washed it away in less than 4 hours. When she saw her face in the bronze mirror, her eyes immediately lit up. The dark red scar had become much lighter. She grabbed Duguyamo excitedly. "Oh my god, it worked. It's real." Duguyamo was happy for her as well. She smiled and said, "It would be great if it could cure you, but..." Hua Wuji said, "But what?" Duguyamo smiled bitterly. "But your family is in a complicated situation. What if your sister hates me?" Hua Wuji frowned. "If she knows that you helped me, she'll definitely hate you. You don't have to doubt that. She was the one who injured me back then and eliminated me from the competition. Only then could she be trained as the only successor of the Hua family." Duguyamo was taken aback. "Then Hua Wuji patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, why would I sell you out? I'm still counting on you to continue supplying me with medicine in the future." "Oh right, which medicine refiner is it?" Duguyamo said. "I'll tell you later, okay?" Hua Wuji also knew that her feud with Hua Wushuang had frightened Duguyamo. She had no choice but to nod. "All right, let's do it in the future." After saying that, she smiled mysteriously. "Perhaps the next time you see me, you won't have to be so respectful to Hua Wushuang." Duguyamo said, "She's the future crown prince's consort. How can we not respect her?" Hua Wuji sneered in disdain. "Future crown prince's consort? Just because she said so. Who gave her the right?" Duguyamo knew that if she continued to listen, she would find out too much. If she knew too much, she would die. Therefore Duguyamo said goodbye. Hua Wuji had something important to do, so she bid Duguyamo farewell. What Hua Wuji didn't know was that a small bird had watched the entire process. It had recently learned the invisibility skill, so unless someone was much stronger than it, no one would discover its existence. Little Phoenix went out with Duguyamo, then ran back to talk to Feng Wu. "You're right. Hua Wuji is really a piece of work." Little Phoenix told Feng Wu everything it had seen and heard. In the end, it glanced at Feng Wu. It seems that the wound on her face is Hua Wuji's biggest weakness. Now that it's about to be erased, what do you think Hua Wuji will do? I'm so looking forward to it. Little Phoenix was born with the blood of a divine beast, and didn't need to cultivate hard at all. It only needed to fill its mouth with something with spiritual essence, then lie down and sleep. When it woke up, its cultivation level had increased. What an easy life. That was why Little Phoenix loved gossip when it was bored. It chattered and was very curious. Feng Wu was busy cultivating, so she sent Little Phoenix away. If you follow Hua Wuji, you'll know what she's up to. Little Phoenix asked. What do you think she'll do? Feng Wu smiled mysteriously. She's going to take Hua Wushuang's place, of course. Apart from that, what else can she do? Little Phoenix rubbed its chin. She's a bit far away from Hua Wushuang in her cultivation, isn't she? I don't think she has the guts to do that yet. If I were her, I would have laid low for a while. But I'll see for myself. Chapter 35-32. Chapter 35-32. Father-Mother. Chapter 35-32. Father-Mother. Filled with curiosity, Little Phoenix went out again. It flew around Hua Manor and listened to the gossip because it was invisible. Little Phoenix soon saw Hua Wuji. Hua Wuji was heading to a side courtyard. Father, Mother. Hua Wuji threw herself excitedly into her father and mother's arms. Her father was Hua Wuyin, the second son of Mrs. Hua. He looked at Hua Wuji in confusion. Ever since that incident, this girl had always been cynical and distant from her parents. Why was she? Honey, why are you? Her mother asked. Mother, look. Hua Wuji had deliberately covered her face along the way. Now that she had taken off the veil, her mother saw that the red scar on her face had mostly healed, leaving only a faint line. Her mother was shocked. Ji-er, what's going on? Hua Wuji repeated what she had said to Dugu Yamo and said, Father, Mother, it was Hua Wushuang who set me up back then. That's why I was disfigured. After that, grandmother removed me from the candidate list. It was all Hua Wushuang's fault. I was disfigured, but what about Hua Wushuang? She has the best cultivation resources. The old lady personally guided her. And she might even become the crown princess consort in the future. I can't stand it. So what do you want to do? Hua Wuyin stared at his daughter. Hua Wuji's face was cold and solemn. I'm just taking back what originally belonged to me. Her mother had been stroking her wound with a trembling hand. When she heard this, she stared at Hua Wuji. What do you mean? Hua Wuji gritted her teeth and said, Father, Mother, didn't you notice? Ever since Hua Wushuang was chosen as the successor, the first branch has been designated to inherit the family. All the power, resources, and connections are flowing in that direction. Father, Mother, don't you feel that you've been neglected by your clansmen all these years? Hua Wuyin and his wife naturally felt it, but they had already accepted this matter over the years. Now their daughter suddenly told them that there was actually another path. Hua Wuji sneered. Father, Mother, now that I have the medicine to treat my face, if Hua Wushuang finds out about this, what do you think she'll do? She'll definitely kill me. So now it's either her or me. If we win, our branch will soar into the sky and take over everything the first branch has. What if we lose? Na W. Ivan stared at his daughter. Hua Wuji sneered. If we lose, Father, you're the old lady's son, and my mother is her niece. I'm her granddaughter. Can she kill us? Moreover, Hua Wushuang did let me down back then. I still have evidence here. Previously, because I couldn't treat the wound on my face, I've been enduring it. Now that I can take her down, why should I take it anymore? But the crown prince. Her mother was in awe of Jun Linyuan after all. Hua Wuji sneered. What does the crown prince consort's position have to do with Hua Wushuang? All of this was done by my grandmother. Without Hua Wushuang, can't we have a marriage alliance with the royal family? Chapter 35-33. Chapter 35-33. Level 8 Spiritual King. Chapter 35-33. Level 8 Spiritual King. Father, Mother, this path ahead of you is very likely to make you become the crown prince's parents-in-law. Hua Wuji was trembling with excitement. It had been her dream, since she was little, to become the crown prince's wife. We'll have to think about it carefully before making a decision, said Hua Wuyin. His wife nodded and said to Hua Wuji, it'll take a while to make a decision like this. Be patient. But Hua Wuji didn't think so. After tomorrow, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager will announce that Hua Wushuang is going to be the crown prince's wife. I have to get rid of her before that happens. Hua Wuji told them her plan. One had to admit that it was vicious but effective. It was very likely that she had been trying to set Hua Wushuang up for so many years that even Hua Wuyin couldn't find any loopholes in her plan. Hua Wuyin was shocked. That's too bold. Hua Wuji said. I don't care if you're going to do it or not. I'll kill myself if you try to stop me. She ran off after that. The door closed with a bang. This time, little Phoenix didn't go after them. Instead, it looked curiously at her parents and wondered what they would do. Master, what should we do now? Madame Hua asked nervously. Apart from following the girl's plan, do you think there's another way? He had already made up his mind. He agreed almost as soon as Hua Wuji told him her plan. Or rather, even if Hua Wuji wouldn't do it, he would. Because Hua Wuji was right. Back then, he and his brother were evenly matched. However, ever since Hua Wushuang was chosen, the old lady had been biased toward his brother, and all her connections had gone to the first branch of the family. Hua Wuyin was even more awarded for the different treatment than Hua Wuji. Of course, he wouldn't live with it. Madame Hua smiled bitterly. Whatever you say, my lord. The second branch of the Hua family reached an agreement. Little Phoenix was amazed. Feng Wu was such a great strategist. All she needed was some information from Hua Wushuang, and she was able to make such an elaborate plan out of it that the second branch of the Hua family willingly jumped into that trap. Becoming Feng Wu's enemy was the worst choice one could ever make. Master, do you know how smart and cunning your little pupil is now? She was like a fairy back then. She's different now. Little Phoenix went back to the room to find Feng Wu cultivating. It then lay down by Feng Wu's feet and studied her closely. When Feng Wu opened her eyes, you're a level 8 spiritual king. Little Phoenix stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Is this a blessed place for you? You were a level 6 spiritual king when you came in yesterday, but you're a level 8 now. Little Phoenix was almost in tears. It had already cultivated once back then, which was why it could make a breakthrough every time it took a nap. However, Feng Wu had started from scratch. Was she even human? Hua Wushuang actually wanted to compete with you. She's still a level 4 spiritual king, but you're a level 8 one. What can she possibly do? Chapter 35-34. Chapter 35-34. Mica Energy 4. Chapter 35-34. Mica Energy 4. Forget about Hua Wushuang. What about Zuoqingxi? Little Phoenix was speechless. Wasn't Zuoqingxi so arrogant before? He looked like he was going to avenge that brat from Duke Li's family. But he was only a level 7 spiritual king. Can you please give these teenagers a way out? Said Little Phoenix. Feng Wu asked in resignation. Can I take that as a compliment? Little Phoenix said. Do you think I want to compliment you? But you're so. Little Phoenix took a jade stone out. Glancing at it, the bird said to Feng Wu, your master's plan for you was to become a spiritual overlord at the age of 15. I told him that he was dreaming. Are you really going to prove me wrong? Feng Wu was surprised. My beautiful master has such a plan. Show me. No. Little Phoenix swallowed the jade stone. It's a secret. I can't let you see. Feng Wu looked at it in grievance. Little Phoenix relented right away. It gave Feng Wu an apologetic look but still insisted. I can't let you see it. How am I going to train you if I do? Feng Wu asked. Have I met all the criteria for my cultivation? Tilting its head, Little Phoenix gave it some thought before giving Feng Wu a regretful look. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. I haven't. Little Phoenix said. You've exceeded the requirement for everything else except for one. Feng Wu asked which one. She would never let her beautiful master down. She had to perfect everything. She was her beautiful master's pride. Little Phoenix said, "Your weapon won't do." Feng Wu said, "The fallen star sword is great." Little Phoenix said, "No, it's not. You've been making progress in your cultivation, but your fallen star sword has stayed where it is. How can that be good? Do you know that the fallen star sword is a legendary sword at its highest level? With your current capability, the fallen star sword can level up a few more times. A level 5 sacred weapon is the right level. It's not just that. More importantly, the fallen star sword has no spiritual power." Feng Wu asked, "Do you mean a sword spirit?" Little Phoenix said, "The so-called sword spirit only exists when it becomes a legendary sword. By no spiritual power, I mean that the fallen star sword hasn't been tempered by chaotic energy. Have you heard of chaotic energy?" Recalling a random book she had read before, Feng Wu asked in bewilderment, "Is that the mica energy when the world was created?" Little Phoenix nodded. Feng Wu frowned, "But that energy is nowhere to be found. I haven't seen it anywhere in years." "It does exist," Little Phoenix said earnestly. "I sensed it in the manor." Feng Wu asked, "Here? Where?" Feng Wu realized the problem with the fallen star sword as well. She had been making rapid breakthroughs, but her fallen star sword had never made any progress. The original swordplay couldn't keep up with her progress, which was the biggest problem. She was worried that if this went on, she would have to find a new sword, and the fallen star sword would have to be abandoned. "I sensed something when I ran around the manor earlier. Let's go have a look." Little Phoenix became serious as well. After all, if other people knew about the mica energy, they would go berserk. Because a weapon refined from the energy would. Chapter 35-35. Chapter 35-35, Secret Path. Chapter 35-35, Secret Path. This was because a weapon refined with mica energy would have its power amplified. Feng Wu rushed out with Little Phoenix without another word. Because Feng Wu was disguised as Hua Wushuang, and Little Phoenix was invisible, they had no problem running around in the manor. It was deep into the night. The moon was covered by thick clouds, and visibility was very low. Led by Little Phoenix, Feng Wu walked further and further away until she reached a flower bed. Just like their surname suggested, the Hua clan was full of flowers. Flowers of all seasons were blooming at the same time. Little Phoenix led Feng Wu to a low slope where red crabapples were swaying in the wind. Little Phoenix stopped right there. Feng Wu looked at it in bewilderment. Little Phoenix sniffed around and told Feng Wu in the end, "It's around here. My nose can't be wrong." Looking around, Feng Wu saw that there was no one there, and the crabapples were completely different from the ones outside. They were so red that they looked like blood. Feng Wu took out a bamboo stick. She tapped the ground and soon, Feng Wu sensed something different. The soil here is softer than in other places. It must have moved around a lot before returning to its original state. However, the inside is completely different. Feng Wu pointed at a slope and told Little Phoenix. She searched for the mechanism as she spoke. "I knew it." Feng Wu looked closely at the place where the crabapple was planted and smiled a little. "There's something special about the location of these flowers. I wouldn't have been able to detect the mechanism 6 months ago. It's so well hidden. I think the Hua clan has a very capable formation master." Naturally, these major clans had accumulated a lot of talent over the years. After some careful calculation, Feng Wu finally stomped on the ground about Lok Mwei. Thud! There was a crisp sound. Crack! As expected, the crabapple bushes parted, and a narrow door wide enough for one person to walk through slowly opened. Feng Wu looked at the door and said to Little Phoenix, "Why do I feel that this is the exit?" Little Phoenix nodded. "I think you're right." Feng Wu said, "I don't know how long it'll take to get to the entrance. Let's just go this way." Feng Wu and Little Phoenix entered the narrow tunnel together. Maybe it was because of the ventilation system. Feng Wu didn't find the place smelly. But it was pitch dark. To be on the safe side, Feng Wu didn't light up the candlesticks. She had a luminous pearl in her hand, which shone mildly in the dark. Feng Wu walked for about 15 minutes before she noticed the light ahead of her. I feel it. It's the energy of Micah. Little Phoenix was thrilled. Not only would it be very beneficial to the refinery, but it would also help Little Phoenix greatly, for its body could be considered a weapon as well. Shoo! Feng Wu stopped and gestured at the bird to keep its voice down. Quiet. There's a high chance that a capable cultivator will preside over this place. Little Phoenix nodded. I can already sense the presence of a master. Chapter 35-36, Chapter 35-36, Master. Chapter 35-36, Master. When Little Phoenix said that it could sense powerful cultivators, Feng Wu sensed it as well. It was the intimidating energy of a capable cultivator. The aura seemed to be everywhere. Very powerful. Feng Wu took a deep breath. If I'm guessing right, he's at least a spiritual overlord. Little Phoenix nodded. Should they back out? Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu in silence. It would be dangerous to go in there again. However, before they could make a decision, they heard a faint noise behind them. The lights on the walls lit up one by one. Feng Wu and Little Phoenix exchanged looks, and both saw astonishment in each other's eyes. In front of them were the capable cultivators above the spiritual overlord stage, and someone was coming their way. Right now they were in grave danger. Let's go. Feng Wu made a prompt decision and dashed off, dragging Little Phoenix with her. They kept their footsteps as low as possible as they ran. Feng Wu was practically floating on the ground, and Little Phoenix didn't even dare to flap its wings. I can include you in my invisibility spell, but... After some hesitation, Little Phoenix told Feng Wu. But to cover you, we'll need a lot of shadows. Little Phoenix was a tiny bird, and it could cover its entire body with its mental power. However, Feng Wu was so much bigger than the bird, and if she was included... Feng Wu lowered her voice. Use it when it's critical. However, the critical moment had arrived. A secluded courtyard had appeared in front of the cave, and two people sat opposite each other. Feng Wu couldn't see clearly in the moonlight, but she could tell right away that they were two formidable cultivators that made her hold her breath. One of them was Mrs. Hua. Feng Wu had met Mrs. Hua before. When she treated Bao Air, Mrs. Hua sat next to the Empress Dowager. Back then Mrs. Hua was supposed to be a wise old lady, but now, she was indeed a capable cultivator. An old man sat across the table. The old man was as old as a skeleton, and had a scar on his face. It was a ghastly sight in the moonlight. Feng Wu was almost out of the cave, when she saw the two people look in her direction. At that critical moment, Little Phoenix had covered Feng Wu with its invisibility spell. Feng Wu stuck her back to the wall, and didn't dare to move. Who's there? Mrs. Hua bellowed. Just then, a figure flitted past Feng Wu, bringing with it a gust of wind. The lower hem of Feng Wu's dress flapped in the wind, almost touching the person. Luckily it didn't touch. Feng Wu minimized her vitality and heartbeat. She looked like a vegetable. As expected, Mrs. Hua paid no attention to Feng Wu after the person ran past them. Feng Wu rejoiced. Luckily, Little Phoenix had turned invisible. Otherwise, they would have disappeared from this world. Let's go. Feng Wu told Little Phoenix in her head. Feng Wu was going to take Little Phoenix away when Mrs. Hua wasn't looking. However, she heard a voice at that moment. We must kill that girl from the Feng family this time. What? Feng Wu felt a chill run down her spine. She recognized the voice. It was Mrs. Hua. Mrs. Hua wanted to kill her. Hearing that someone was trying to kill her, Chapter 35-37, Chapter 35-37. Someone wanted to kill her. Chapter 35-37. Someone wanted to kill her. Hearing that someone wanted to kill her, no one would leave now, and Feng Wu was no exception. Feng Wu didn't dare to watch, for she would be spotted very easily. She only pricked up her ears. Mrs. Hua was giving instructions to the person that had run past her. Feng Wu finally saw the person out of the corner of her eye. It was a middle-aged woman. She was Hua Wushuang's maid. and Feng Wu remembered that she was called Aunt Shi. Mrs. Hua asked her about Hua Wushuang first. Aunt Shi told her that Hua Wushuang had lost to Feng Wu and was cultivating. Mrs. Hua frowned and said to Aunt Shi, "Everyone wants to kill Feng Wu now, including the Zhou family." Mrs. Hua glanced at the old man as she spoke. Feng Wu had been observing the old man from the corner of her eye the whole time. She noticed that the old man had listened to Mrs. Hua and was sipping his wine. He smiled when he heard that the Zhou family was going to kill Feng Wu as well. The Zhou family? Feng Wu was convinced right away that the old man was a member of the Zhou family, and a very prominent one. He could sit opposite Mrs. Hua. If Mrs. Hua was the head of the Hua clan, could the old man be Zhou Qingyuan's grandfather? The old master of the Zhou family that Jun Linyuan had injured earlier? "You're too excited," Little Phoenix reminded Feng Wu. "Yes," Feng Wu replied to Little Phoenix in her head, but she shifted a little. "What are you doing?" Little Phoenix was shocked. "Why are you still moving? Aren't you afraid of being discovered?" Feng Wu said, "We have to. We'll be spotted if we stay here for too long. We need to find a place to hide." Feng Wu spotted a cluster of crabapples a short distance away. Hence, she snuck into the thick growth of flowers and covered herself with them. Little Phoenix was so frightened that it didn't dare to move or breathe. Luckily, the powerful cultivators weren't paying attention to them. Feng Wu pricked up her ears and listened to Mrs. Hua. She was furious when she heard that the Zhou and Hua families would each send out 15 spiritual overlords to kill her. Both Mrs. Hua and the old master of the Zhou family thought too highly of her. She was only a spiritual king. She was openly known as a level 4 spiritual king, although she had just become a level 8 spiritual king. But that was it. Why were they sending 30 spiritual overlords after her? Did they want to destroy her entire clan? Just then, Old Master Zhou said grimly, "The Feng clan is no longer needed in this world." Mrs. Hua frowned and turned to look at him. "Do you want to destroy the Feng clan?" Old Master Zhou said coldly, "If we don't get rid of the roots, the grass will grow again." Back then, the Zhou family thought too highly of ourselves and only listened to Zhou Qingyuan's suggestions. We only destroyed Feng Wu's true phoenix blood, which was worth more than being killed. But it turns out that the chosen one is indeed unique. She has risen in the way of the divine phoenix blood. I can't believe it. Zhou Chengfeng put down his teacup. Old Master Zhou was half hidden in his cape, and he was all skin and bones. He looked like a ghost when he removed his cape. He smirked all of a sudden. Chapter 35-38. Chapter 35-38. Destroy the Feng clan. Chapter 35-38. Destroy the Feng clan. I can live with it if she rises because of the divine phoenix blood. But she found another way and became close to Jun Linyuan. Old Master Zhou stared at Mrs. Hua with a grim look on his face. Feng Wu didn't dare to look into Old Master Zhou's eyes, but she heard everything he said. Not only was Old Master Zhou going to kill her, but he was also going to destroy the entire Feng clan. The other members of the Feng clan hadn't done anything, and they were all innocent. How could these people destroy the entire clan just to kill her? Feng Wu recalled all the members of the Feng clan. The beautiful lady, Feng Xiaoqi Qiuling Granny Zhao, the 3 elders of the forbidden area, and the members of the first and third branches. There were so many lives. However, if all 30 spiritual overlords rushed in together, even with the formation, the White Fairy, and the help sent by Emperor Wu, Northern Feng Mansion, and Yu Minji, there was nothing the Feng clan could do. Eleni entire Feng clan would dual peckle out. Feng Wu's family had always been her taboo, and she wouldn't let anything happen to them. The Zhou family, the Hua family. Feng Wu gritted her teeth and clenched her fists so hard that her nails dug into her palms. This was the second time in her life that she had been cornered. "Calm down. We'll figure something out." Little Phoenix comforted Feng Wu. "You're our only hope. If they beat you, no one will be able to save the Feng clan." Little Phoenix was anxious as well. Its master hadn't woken up yet, and the master's pupils were all over the continent. They were too far away to offer any help. If the bird had known, it would have told little Feng Wu that she had those helpers. But its master said that little Feng Wu had to grow on her own, and couldn't help her too much. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hua was still talking to Zhuo Chengfeng. What's her relationship with Jun Linyuan? Mrs. Hua asked. Zhuo Chengfeng smirked. Why would a genius like Jun Linyuan be trapped by love? Mrs. Hua nodded. I'm only worried that Jun Linyuan will be displeased afterward. Zhuo Chengfeng was sure that Jun Linyuan would be displeased and would take his revenge. But when that happened, he would be aiming at the Hua family, not the Zhuo family. That was why Zhuo Chengfeng wanted to work with Mrs. Hua to get rid of Feng Wu. Because he had been beaten up by Jun Linyuan, he knew that he couldn't kill Feng Wu himself. He had to have a scapegoat. Now that the Empress Dowager had betrothed Hua Wushuang to Jun Linyuan, Jun Linyuan would only come to the Hua family afterward, thinking that they were the culprits. That was what Zhuo Chengfeng had in mind. Although Mrs. Hua didn't know that Jun Linyuan had beaten up Zhuo Chengfeng, she was smart and vigilant. She stared at Zhuo Chengfeng and asked, Have you fought Jun Linyuan before? Who won? That smart old hag. She had been smart back then, but she was even smarter now. Zhuo Chengfeng snorted inwardly, but he said matter-of-factly, Yes, we did fight, but no one won. Mrs. Hua said, That is to say, you're not as good as him. Zhuo Chengfeng said, You. Mrs. Hua said, I know you well. If you say no one won, then he's definitely better than you. Zhuo Chengfeng was furious. That old hag. Mrs. Hua chuckled. He's indeed good enough to be my grandson-in-law. Chapter 3539, Chapter 3539 Treasure Hall. Chapter 3539, Treasure Hall. Mrs. Hua chuckled. He's indeed good enough to be my grandson-in-law. Zhuo Chengfeng glanced at her, but didn't say anything. Mrs. Hua asked, When do we do it? Zhuo Chengfeng asked, How about right after the birthday? Mrs. Hua nodded. Deal. Hua Yuerong. I didn't know you could find the mica energy. Zhuo Chengfeng stared at Mrs. Hua. Once they reached an agreement, they became much closer. Mrs. Hua smiled. Mica energy is indeed hard to find, but it's not impossible. What? After all these years, you still haven't accumulated any? Mrs. Hua took a wooden box out of her sleeve as she spoke. The wooden box was opened, and a wisp of smoke rose out. Zhuo Chengfeng was infatuated. However, Mrs. Hua seemed to be baiting him. When the air rose, she waved her hand, and all the air went back into the ordinary-looking box. While Zhuo Chengfeng watched enviously, Mrs. Hua said to Aunt Shi, Put away this box. Aunt Shi said respectfully, Yes. She walked up to the box, took out a thick white felt, and carefully put it away. Put it in the treasure hall, said Mrs. Hua indifferently. Aunt Shi nodded and left the room. When she walked past a cave, she suddenly felt something, and reached out to grab something in the air. It was right where Feng Wu had been. Feng Wu would have been exposed if she hadn't left that spot. Luckily, Aunt Shi didn't catch anything. She left without hesitation. Feng Wu was greatly relieved. I can't hold on much longer. Little Phoenix struggled to speak. Feng Wu looked into her mind, and saw that the usually carefree bird was covered in sweat, and was obviously exhausted. She couldn't stay here any longer. Hence, Feng Wu carefully made her way out. Feng Wu was very cautious as she followed Aunt Shi. She only dared to land her feet when Aunt Shi did, and catch her breath when Aunt Shi breathed. As expected, when Feng Wu did that, the two spiritual overlords didn't notice her. Feng Wu didn't let her guard down after she entered the tunnel. There were so many capable cultivators here, that she felt as if she was walking on thin ice. One wrong move, and she could lose her life. Once that strange feeling was eliminated, and she didn't think about it anymore. After all, there was no way that anyone could have been lurking around the two powerful cultivators, not to mention that Aunt Shi couldn't find them anywhere. There were two forks in the tunnel. One led to Mrs. Hua's courtyard, and the other led to the treasure hall. The two of them were only a few kilometers apart, and it only took them a few seconds to cover the distance. And she took a key out of her chest pocket and opened the door to the treasure hall. I can't hold on much longer. Little Phoenix swayed and almost fainted. Hold on. Just hang in there a little longer. We'll be in the treasure room in no time. Fengwu comforted the cub in a low voice. And she probably realized how popular the object was. Without hesitation, she took out a strange key, put it in the keyhole, and unlocked it with a password and 3 inscriptions. Chapter 3540, Chapter 3540, Clear Out. Chapter 3540, Clear Out. And she opened the door to the vault in one go. What she didn't know was that Fengwu arrived as soon as she did. Once inside, Fengwu hid in a secluded corner. Little Phoenix couldn't hold on much longer. The invisibility spell disappeared as soon as Fengwu hid herself. If She turned her head now, she would immediately spot Fengwu. Unfortunately, She was too absorbed in the box to notice that someone had followed her in. Right now, She was carefully holding the small box as if she was holding a baby. She didn't know what button she pressed, but there was a click. There was a faint sound. Fengwu looked out of the gap and saw that she had opened a row of bookshelves. She then took a book out of the shelf. After she opened the book, Fengwu read it under the moonlight, only to find that it was hollow. She put the small box into the book, then put the thick book back on the shelf. She stepped on one of the pillars on the shelf, and there was a cracking sound. The bookshelf turned over and fit perfectly in. It looked like an ordinary white wall. Fengwu wouldn't have noticed it if she hadn't seen she flipping the wall around. She didn't leave right away after that. Instead, she took out a thin piece of cloth and began to clean the room inch by inch. Fengwu didn't know what to say. She wanted to get She to leave as soon as possible, but it felt like She was staying here forever. It took her an hour to clean all the secret compartments. That was right. She had opened all the secret compartments when she wiped the shelves. If Fengwu hadn't known that She was her enemy, she would have thought that She had opened everything on purpose, so that Fengwu would know where the good stuff was and how to open the doors. An hour later, She was finally done. She straightened her clothes and pushed the door open. Finally, Fengwu let out a long breath. She was really something. Although she had opened all the secret compartments, she had also set up all the traps after she wiped them clean. Traps came one after another. If an unsuspecting person entered the hall, they would trigger all the alarms. Even someone as capable as Zhua Chengfeng might not be able to avoid all of them. She had done Fengwu a great favor. Fengwu opened the bookshelf on the wall first, for it contained the energy of mica. As expected, Fengwu copied what She did and easily obtained the energy. As for the other treasures, recalling Mrs. Hua's plan with the old master of the Zhua family today, Fengwu was furious. They wanted to destroy the Feng clan. For that she would take everything. No matter how well hidden the mechanism was, Fengwu had found everything. Fengwu didn't know exactly what was in the room, and she just went on taking them. She didn't leave anything for Mrs. Hua. Fengwu went to the first treasure room she visited right after she left the treasure hall, and emptied it as well. The treasure room wasn't always visited, so no one in the Hua clan knew that it had been cleared out. Chapter 3541, Chapter 3541, Body Forge. Chapter 3541, Body Forge. The treasure room wasn't always visited, so no one in the Hua clan knew that it had been cleared out. Fengwu went back to her cultivation room after collecting the mica energy and clearing out the 2 vaults. These are all great stuff, Little Phoenix said to Fengwu in excitement. You can use a lot of the resources inside. They'll help you make another breakthrough. Fengwu was a little concerned. Am I making breakthroughs too fast for my body to keep up? Little Phoenix said proudly. Do you have any idea what you found this time? Fengwu asked. What? Little Phoenix said. It's the Body Forge ointment, a sacred level 1. Only major clans like the Hua clan have it, and it's not circulated on the market. Fengwu asked. The Body Forge ointment. Little Phoenix said, "The Body Forge ointment can greatly improve your physical fitness in a short period of time. It can refine your muscles, tendons, and membranes. Other people may spend a lot of time on these 3 steps, but with the sacred level Body Forge ointment, you can improve much faster." Little Phoenix clicked its tongue. This Body Forge ointment alone is worth your effort tonight. Stop waiting and start cultivating. There's going to be a big battle. Feng Wu nodded. But the plot of the Hua family and the Zhou family can't be underestimated. Go back to the Feng clan and send the message to Feng Sun and the others. After Feng Wu left, Feng Sun and Yu Minji were in charge of the Feng clan. Also, tell the White Fairy that I have a plan. Starting tomorrow, the Hua family and the Zhou family won't have the energy to go after the Feng clan. If anything happens, ask her to guard the Feng clan for me. If she does that, I'll tell her about my 3rd senior brother. Little Phoenix nodded. I'll be right back. Little Phoenix was already very fast, and with its stealth ability, the entire Hua clan was at its mercy. After Little Phoenix left, Feng Wu took out the Body Forge ointment to refine her body. All the treasures in the vault were stored in brocade boxes, which Feng Wu put away in her storage bag. It took Feng Wu a while to find the Body Forge ointment Little Phoenix was talking about. It was a green jade jar that was half a foot tall. She opened the lid, and a pleasant smell filled her nostrils. After locking the door and windows, Feng Wu walked into the bath at the back. Hua Wushuang's cultivation room was equipped with everything. Pink petals filled the bathtub, and tiny bubbles rose from the hot spring. However, Feng Wu didn't go into the bath. Instead, she applied the sticky Body Forge ointment all over her body, according to the instructions Little Phoenix gave her. The process would make one's muscles stronger and fuller. After applying the Body Forge ointment, Feng Wu recited divine body technique in her head. It wasn't from the Hua family. Feng Wu had learned it from her beautiful master when she was little. Feng Wu had been so busy cultivating her techniques that she had neglected her physical training. What Little Phoenix didn't say was that not only wasn't she adequate in her fallen star sword, but she wasn't as fit as she should be either. Feng Wu cleared her head and focused on refining her body. About 2 hours later, the Body Forge ointment covering Feng Wu began to fall off. Feng Wu's muscles, on the other hand, were firm and full. She did it. Chapter 3542. Chapter 3542, The Genius Girl. Chapter 3542, The Genius Girl. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. During her cultivation just then, she had finished the process of refining her body. But it wasn't over yet. This was only the beginning. Feng Wu then entered the 2nd stage of her body forging, which was tendon training. The Body Forge ointment had fallen off, and Feng Wu put another layer on herself. By then, more than half of the big jar of Body Forge ointment was gone. When Feng Wu opened her eyes 2 hours later, she realized that she had succeeded. Then it was time to refine the membrane. Feng Wu opened her eyes again when the sky began to light up. Her eyes lit up. The 3rd stage of the body forging process was completed. Feng Wu finally let out a breath of relief. Rising to her feet, she carefully washed off the residue of the Body Forge ointment with the hot spring water and changed into clean clothes. You did it. Little Phoenix stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. You really did it. Feng Wu asked, What? Little Phoenix said, It's only been a night, and you've risen from level 1 to level 3, and have completed all 3 stages. Feng Wu asked, Am I doing all right? Little Phoenix stared at Feng Wu in resignation. What do you mean by all right? That's more than just all right. Do you know how many stages there are in total? Do you know how long it took other people to complete all 3 of them? Do you know how fast you're making progress now? Feng Wu shook her head in bewilderment. Little Phoenix waved at her in resignation. Normal people would take at least 3 to 5 years to make a breakthrough from level 1 to level 3. The less talented ones may not make a breakthrough even after 10 years, but you, one night. Are you kidding me? Feng Wu said. Isn't it because of the Body Forge ointment? Little Phoenix said. The Body Forge ointment has indeed helped you greatly, But you don't depend on external forces to make a breakthrough. You have to depend on yourself. You've made 3 breakthroughs in a row in less than a night. If I had known, I would have let you train your body earlier. Feng Wu said, You've only reminded me until now. Little Phoenix smiled bitterly. You've been suppressed by Zhuoqingyuan the whole time, and are trying to make a breakthrough in your cultivation as soon as possible. If you have to spend half of your time on body forging, who knows when you'll catch up with Zhuoqingyuan. But how was I supposed to know that you're more talented in body forging than cultivating? You're such a strange girl. Feng Wu said confidently, I think I can do it again. Please don't. Little Phoenix stopped Feng Wu. Finishing 3 stages of the body forging process in one go is already unheard of. The entire body forging stage only has 10 levels. Beyond that, one will become immortal. Feng Wu checked the time. Today was Mrs. Hua's birthday, and many things were going to happen. Feng Wu's plan would be carried out today as well. Feng Wu knew that her plan couldn't fail. If it failed, not only would she be caught and killed, but the entire Feng clan would be destroyed as well. Since I still have time, I'll go forge the Fallen Star Sword, said Feng Wu earnestly. Little Phoenix frowned. Are you in such a hurry? Feng Wu said. Only when the mica energy is refined into the Fallen Star Sword will it be mine. Otherwise, it'll be taken back sooner or later. You can sense it, so of course someone like Mrs. Hua can sense it as well. Little Phoenix agreed, so it nodded at Feng Wu. You have a point. Do it. Chapter 3543. Chapter 3543. Birthday 1. Chapter 3543. Birthday 1. Feng Wu said in a serious tone. Keep an eye on the time and Zhuoqingxi for me. He's the main character today. And have you told Feng Sun about my plan? Little Phoenix patted its chest. Don't worry. I'll take care of everything. Seeing that Little Phoenix had agreed without hesitation, Feng Wu immediately went to refine the mica energy. After an indeterminate amount of time, when the Fallen Star Sword shone coldly and almost shot up into the sky, Little Phoenix, who had been guarding Feng Wu, opened its eyes wide. It watched this in astonishment. The girl had to be joking. She had succeeded again. Little Phoenix had thought that Feng Wu was only joking. After all, who could make 3 breakthroughs in a row after stealing 2 treasure rooms in one night and forge a weapon with the mica energy? Normal people would never be able to do that. But Feng Wu didn't open her eyes yet, but she opened her mouth. Whoosh! The Fallen Star Sword turned into a streak of light and disappeared into her mouth. You've refined all the energy in that box. You didn't waste any of it. Little Phoenix said to Feng Wu, who had just opened her eyes. You made the Fallen Star Sword into a semi-divine weapon with that energy. That was unbelievable. No, she was better than that. Little Phoenix was raised by Mu Jiuzhou in his later years, and had seen all kinds of things, but it was still shocked by Feng Wu. The girl was so good at dealing with pressure. The more critical a moment was, the bigger her breakthrough. If she has time, she can even become a spiritual overlord, Little Phoenix thought to itself. Finally, Feng Wu smiled. Little Phoenix asked, How do you feel now? Tilting her head, Feng Wu gave it some thought. I just feel that the Fallen Star Sword is filled with spiritual energy and is going to destroy the world. Little Phoenix nodded. That's right. It really is a semi-divine weapon. I thought you would reach perfection in the current stage at most. Forget it. You've always been like this. Why can't I get used to it? Feng Wu cleared her throat. What time is it now? Little Phoenix said. It's almost noon. Get ready. It's time to celebrate your grandmother's birthday. Recalling how perceptive Mrs. Hua was, Feng Wu nodded and went back to get dressed. It was an hour later when everything was ready. There was a noise outside. Miss Wushuang, are you there? Feng Wu opened the door to find a maid outside. As soon as she said that, Feng Wu knew that she was there to serve Hua Wushuang. Because Hua Wushuang was in seclusion, the maid didn't dare to disturb her. She only knocked on the door when she couldn't wait anymore. Her name was Songxiang, and she was a senior maid. She was in charge of everything in Hua Wushuang's room. Behind her were several younger maids. They filed in, trying to dress Hua Wushuang up. Of course, Feng Wu wouldn't let them do that. If they put any makeup on her face, they would immediately see that she was an impersonator. Feng Wu frowned. We don't have time for this. Let's go. Song Xiang said. But Miss Wushuang, Mrs. Hua says that today is an important day for you, so you have to dress up. We were worried that you might be cultivating, so we didn't dare to come in. We were delayed. Chapter 3544, Chapter 3544, Birthday 2. Chapter 3544, Birthday 2. Staring at Song Xiang, Feng Wu asked in an authoritative tone, Are you saying that I'm not pretty if I don't dress up? Miss Wushuang was genuinely angry. Song Xiang's stomach lurched. Of course not. Just then, they heard anxious voices outside. Mrs. Hua wants to see Miss Wushuang in the main hall now. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager will be here soon. It was Ma Shu, the maid of Mrs. Hua. Hence, they quickly headed for the main hall. When Feng Wu arrived, she saw that all the members of the Hua clan were there, many of whom she didn't know. To be more precise, Mrs. Hua was the only one she had met before. Feng Wu reacted quickly and cleared her throat. Mrs. Hua asked, Are you still injured? Feng Wu nodded. I was in a hurry to get out, so my spiritual essence went into the wrong channel. I'll be fine after some rest. Mrs. Hua nodded. Good. Sensing someone glaring at her, Feng Wu turned around involuntarily. She saw a girl smirking at her. Feng Wu recognized her. It was Hua Wuji. Next to Hua Wuji was Hua Wuyu, and behind them were their parents, the couple from the second branch of the Hua family. Naturally, Hua Wushuang's parents were next to Feng Wu. Hua Wushuang's younger brother was a teenager named Hua Zichen. They hadn't interacted with each other before, but he looked like a malicious teenager. By then, a lot of guests had arrived. Feng Wu looked around and saw many familiar faces. Mrs. Zhua of the Zhua family was here as well. She also saw Mrs. Dugu, Lady Tao, Lady Li, and Lady Yi. Feng Wu counted in her head. Of all the important families in the imperial capital, all the ladies were here, but neither Lady Northern Feng nor the Feng clan was here. The noble ladies sat around and chatted among themselves. Seeing Feng Wu, a lady took her hand and smiled at Mrs. Hua. Miss Wushuang is getting prettier. I wonder which young man will be lucky enough in the future. The Empress Dowager wanted Hua Wushuang to be the crown prince's wife, which was supposed to be a top secret, but Hua Wushuang was so excited that she bragged about it to a few people. As a result, the news had already gotten around. The speaker was Lady Yi. Lady Tao hadn't heard the news. She looked at Mrs. Zhua in bewilderment. Wasn't Zhua Qingwan supposed to be? Mrs. Zhua no longer had any hope for Zhua Qingwan to marry Jun Linyuan. All she wanted was to kill Feng Wu. Her father-in-law had asked her to come, and Zhua Ming had told her that Hua Wushuang was at least a better choice than Feng Wu when it came to Jun Linyuan's future wife. Hence Mrs. Zhua slowly changed her mind. She smiled at Lady Tao. I think only His Royal Highness is good enough for Miss Wushuang. Many people gave Mrs. Zhua strange looks. Mrs. Zhua knew that she had to explain, or the others would still remember Zhua Qingwan's previous birthday. That day, Zhua Qingwan invited His Royal Highness over, but His Royal Highness set off fireworks for Feng Wu instead. Many ladies believed that. At that thought, Mrs. Zhua smiled. Qingwan is so focused on her cultivation that she doesn't care about things like marriage. I don't know when she'll come out of her seclusion. Chapter 3545, Chapter 3545, Birthday 3. Chapter 3545, Birthday 3. Everyone realized that the Zhua family had given up on Jun Linyuan. No wonder Mrs. Zhua was here for Mrs. Hua's birthday party. However, the look in Lady Tao's eyes was rather strange, and the outspoken Miss Tao asked the question directly. Mrs. Zhua, Is Zhuo Qingwan really not going to court His Royal Highness anymore? Miss Tao asked. Mrs. Zhuo's face turned livid. She threw a dirty look at Miss Tao. Lady Tao nudged her daughter. Miss Tao said, I'm only telling the truth. Last time on Zhuo Qingwan's birthday, she said that the crown prince would definitely come. But Lady Tao glared at Miss Tao, who stopped talking in frustration. However, Mrs. Zhuo's face was livid by then, and she forced a smile. Qingwan and the crown prince are childhood sweethearts, that's all. Nothing is certain. Plus, Qingwan is the future head of the Firmament Palace, and she doesn't have time for love. Everyone chimed in, praising Zhuo Qingwan and giving Mrs. Zhuo an out. Only Tnen Iv Jares. Elio become less angry. And she went up to Mrs. Hua and whispered, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is still 5 kilometers away. Mrs. Hua nodded and said, Her Majesty is coming. Please come with me. Those who were close to the Hua family knew the Empress Dowager would be here tonight, but many didn't. They were shocked when they heard the news. The Empress Dowager was here. The most prestigious woman of the Zhenwu Empire had come to the Hua Manor to celebrate Mrs. Hua's birthday. Did she think so highly of Mrs. Hua? The Empress Dowager was a very difficult person to get along with, so only a handful of noble ladies here could talk to her. But because His Majesty was a filial son, everyone wanted to get closer to the Empress Dowager. The noble ladies' eyes lit up when they heard the news, and they all had their own plans. Feng Wu helped Mrs. Hua to her feet. The Empress Dowager was very friendly to Mrs. Hua, but she wouldn't talk to anyone else. She then looked at Feng Wu. Of course, to her, Feng Wu was Hua Wushuang. The Empress Dowager smiled and asked Mrs. Hua, has Wushuang made some progress recently? Mrs. Hua took the hint and smiled. Ever since Your Majesty gave her the celestial spirit bead, her cultivation level has improved significantly. What level is she now? Is she a level 4 spiritual king yet? Her Majesty's eyes lit up. Feng Wu was a little troubled. As a matter of fact, she was a level 8 spiritual king now. If the news got out, the Empress Dowager would probably be astonished. However, before Feng Wu could say anything, Mrs. Hua grabbed her hand. She smiled and said, She's indeed a. Suddenly Mrs. Hua's expression changed. She wasn't sensing the spiritual essence of a level 4 spiritual king, but a level 8 one. Was she mistaken? Could her granddaughter be a level 8 spiritual king? Wushuang Yor, Mrs. Hua stared at Feng Wu in disbelief and forgot to speak. The Empress Dowager looked at Mrs. Hua in bewilderment before turning to Granny Gui. Granny Gui nodded, stepped forward, and grabbed Feng Wu's wrist. Feng Wu had let her catch it on purpose. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to. A level 8 spiritual king? Granny Gui cried out in surprise. What? Everyone stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. A level 8 spiritual king? Were they hearing things? She was a level 8 spiritual king. Ahem. Chapter 3546, Chapter 3546, a level 8 spiritual king. Chapter 3546, a level 8 spiritual king. Ahem. Feng Wu covered her mouth and chuckled. The Empress Dowager immediately asked, What happened? Are you hurt? Mrs. Hua smiled bitterly. The girl competed with a girl of the Feng clan yesterday, and that girl was a little cunning and injured her. Feng Wu waved her hands in a hurry. Don't worry. I'll be fine after some rest. The Empress Dowager held Feng Wu's hand and talked to her affectionately. Everyone here was smart enough to know what was going on. Judging by the look on the Empress Dowager's face, they already knew what was going on. The Empress Dowager took Feng Wu's hand and smiled as they walked in. Do you like the bracelets I gave you? Feng Wu looked at the pair of dragon and phoenix bracelets on her wrist. They're quite nice. The Empress Dowager brought it up on purpose, as if she was worried that the others wouldn't notice. As a matter of fact, what she said worked wonders. As soon as she said that, many looked at Feng Wu's wrist. One look, and one could tell what was going on. Those who didn't know better asked around in secret, and soon learned the answer. The bracelets were given only to the crown prince's wife. Her Majesty had never given them to Feng Wu, but now, she had given them to Hua Wushuang. Did that mean? Good girl. The Empress Dowager sat down and kept Feng Wu company. She patted Feng Wu's hand and said, "At first, I only knew that you were a kind, smart, and virtuous girl. But now, I see that you're a genius." Feng Wu had no choice but to play along with the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager went on. "They've been saying that Zhuo Qinghuan is the most talented girl with the true phoenix blood in the imperial capital. What level is she now?" "Mrs. Zhuo came out in a hurry. She's a spiritual king." Mrs. Zhuo wanted to say that Zhuo Qinghuan was a level 2 spiritual king, but that was nothing compared to a level 8 spiritual king. Since Zhuo Qinghuan wasn't here, Mrs. Zhuo gritted her teeth. She's a level 5 spiritual king. She didn't dare to exaggerate, fearing that the others would see through her lie. "What about Feng Wu?" the Empress Dowager asked. Mrs. Zhuo said, "She's a level 4 spiritual king." Tisk tisk, the Empress Dowager smirked. "Isn't Feng Wu supposed to be a genius among geniuses? Isn't she supposed to have the divine phoenix blood? She's only a level 4 spiritual king." The others didn't know what to say. At 14A level, 4 spiritual king was already a genius. However, everyone looked at Hua Wushuang. This girl was a level 8 spiritual king. Mrs. Hua kept staring at Feng Wu in excitement. She had never expected that her granddaughter would be so capable. The Hua family was going to rise again. Their future was promising. The Empress Dowager kept holding Feng Wu's hand and smiled. "A genius girl like you has to marry into the royal family." Everyone laughed along with the Empress Dowager. They all realized that the Empress Dowager was going to marry Hua Wushuang to the royal family. But, "Wushuang, what do you think of the crown prince?" The Empress Dowager smiled at Feng Wu. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. "Damn you, Jun Linyuan. You really want to marry Hua Wushuang, don't you?" Despite her frustration, Feng Wu played along and feigned a shy tone. "Your Majesty, what are you talking about?" Covering her face with her hands, Feng Wu ran off shyly. Feng Wu kicked an old tree angrily after she was far away from the crowd. Chapter 3547. Chapter 3547. Matchmaking 1. Chapter 3547. Matchmaking 1. Feng Wu ran out shyly, and everyone in the room laughed. Who would care if it was sincere or fake? As long as Her Majesty was happy. Meanwhile, one of them watched Feng Wu leave and smirked. It was Zhuo Qingxi, Zhuo Qinghuan's brother. A dangerous light flashed in Zhuo Qingxi's eyes. At this moment, Hua Wuji walked to Zhuo Qingxi's side. No one knew what Hua Wuji said to him, but the two of them chatted and laughed as they walked out the door. Seeing them walking together, Lady Tao suddenly smiled and said to Mrs. Zhuo, "Your son seems to be quite close to the Hua family's third daughter." Many people turned to look in that direction. Sure enough, Zhuo Qingxi and Hua Wuji were walking side by side. Zhuo Qingxi was brought here by Mrs. Zhuo. As soon as she arrived, she introduced Zhuo Qingxi, who was a level 7 spiritual king, to everyone, so everyone knew he was. Mrs. Zhuo frowned. Hua Wuji, the third daughter of the Hua family? The girl who had a scar on her face and wasn't valued by the Hua family? That wasn't the standard of the Zhuo family's daughter-in-law. However, since Mrs. Hua and the Empress Dowager were here, Mrs. Zhuo couldn't say anything. She only smiled. Young people like to talk to each other. It's fine. Was it fine? The Empress Dowager hadn't really told them about the Crown Prince's marriage arrangement, so everyone had been pretending not to know. Talking about such things needed the right timing. They couldn't start talking about it abruptly. Someone had to guide the topic in that direction. For example, Lady Yi was a smart person. She was the first to speak. Mississippi Wushuang is getting prettier. She's doing great in the capital city. Lady Li also said, not only is she good-looking, but she's also a level 8 spiritual king. She's already so powerful at such a young age. What will happen in the future? The other ladies also chimed in and praised Hua Wushuang. Lady Yi stole a glance at the Empress Dowager. Just as she had expected, the Empress Dowager smiled like a blooming flower when she heard the compliments. Hence Lady Yi, who was good at currying favor with authoritative figures, deliberately mentioned Feng Wu again. Everyone in the Feng clan says that Miss Feng Wu is talented, but I don't think so. If she's so talented, how come she's not as good as Miss Wuxia? As expected, Lady Yi realized that Her Majesty's eyebrows were raised when she belittled Feng Wu. She was so happy. Lady Yi had heard that the Empress Dowager was here to announce Hua Wuxiang's betrothal. She hadn't believed it at the time, but from the looks of it now, she decided to probe around. If it was true, she might be able to become a matchmaker. This matchmaker was very important. The Hua family would thank her, and Her Majesty would think highly of her in the future. Even her husband could take this opportunity to. The more Lady Yi thought about it, the more eager she became. She covered her mouth and smiled. Your Majesty, Miss Wuxia is getting better and better. I really can't help but want to be her matchmaker. The Empress Dowager smiled at her. Matchmaker? Who are the lucky in-laws? Of course, it's your family. Apart from the royal family, who else is worthy of our level 8 spiritual king? Don't you think so? The Empress Dowager asked. Who do you think is suitable for the royal family? Lady Yi giggled. Who else can it be? Chapter 3548. Chapter 3548. Matchmaking 2. Chapter 3548. Matchmaking 2. Lady Yi smiled. Who else can it be? Our crown prince, of course. After saying that, Lady Yi became even more smug. She observed the Empress Dowager's reaction, and knew that the latter would be delighted. As expected, after she said that, Her Majesty smiled. Junjun, the Empress Dowager smiled. That's a good idea. The others thought. What do you mean by a good idea? You've already given the bracelets to Hua Wuxiang. Isn't this hint obvious enough? Lady Yi wanted to roll her eyes, but she only smiled. I think they're very compatible. Just then someone in the crowd said, Isn't Feng Wu the crown prince's fiancé? The person stopped talking after that, so when the Empress Dowager looked in the direction of the voice, she couldn't identify who it was. Just then, many people looked at the Empress Dowager in confusion. The relationship between Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan spread like wildfire in the capital. The fireworks in the sky above the imperial capital that day were still being talked about. Jun Linyuan the sovereign descends to the world. Feng Wu the phoenix soars above the land. Together, such a peerless youth and such a beautiful girl were as beautiful as a poem or a painting. But now, were they going to be torn apart? The Empress Dowager pulled a long face and glared around. The crown prince and Feng Wu are never engaged. If there's a rumor, it's all Feng Wu's doing. Which one of you believes Feng Wu's rumor? Step forward. I have something to tell you. Seeing that the Empress Dowager was infuriated, no one dared to say anything. The madam who spoke just now was also trembling at this moment, and didn't dare to speak again. The Empress Dowager snorted. That Feng Wu has done a lot of harm. She's tarnished the crown prince's reputation. Lady Yi was also a little surprised. She knew about Feng Wu and the crown prince, but to her surprise. Your Majesty, so the rumors aren't true? Lady Yi smiled. No wonder everyone misunderstood. It's just that Feng Wu is a little close to His Royal Highness. Before the Empress Dowager could sneer, Lady Yi said, Then, do you think that Wu Shuang and His Royal Highness are a good match? The Empress Dowager had been waiting for Lady Yi to say that. She said calmly, I think the two of them are meant for each other. However, before the Empress Dowager could finish, there was an ear-splitting scream. It was a man's voice. Screams tore through the sky and shot into the clouds. Even the people outside the Hua residence heard it, let alone the people inside. The Empress Dowager was so shocked that she didn't finish her sentence. Mrs. Zhu's face turned pale. She was the only one who recognized the scream as Zhua Qingxi's. Without hesitation, Mrs. Zhu ran to the backyard. Everyone turned to look at the Empress Dowager after Mrs. Zhu left. The Empress Dowager didn't look happy, and neither did Mrs. Hua. She was halfway through his sentence, but she was interrupted. Who was it? But Mrs. Hua also knew that now wasn't the time to talk about marriage. She forced a smile. Your Majesty, I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. We'll soon know what happened. Before she spoke, Mrs. Hua had already ordered the nanny beside her to go to the backyard. However, the Empress Dowager suddenly got curious. She stood up and said, "Let's go to the backyard together." Chapter 3549, Chapter 3549, Shocking News 1. Chapter 3549, Shocking News 1. Mrs. Hua had no choice but to go with the Empress Dowager. When they arrived at the backyard, they saw. In Hua Wushuang's courtyard, the door was open, and a group of maids and grannies surrounded it. At this moment, these servants were all dumbfounded. Their faces were pale, and they were flustered and at a loss. Seeing the Empress Dowager and Mrs. Hua arrive, they got down on their knees. Seeing this, Mrs. Hua's heart skipped a beat. What exactly happened? Just then, an angry voice came from inside. "Zuoqingxi, you bastard! How dare you treat me like this? You know that I'm about to become the crown princess consort, and you want to destroy me. You said something about planting your seed in me, and letting me take it in, so that the crown prince will think it's his baby. That's all bullshit. How dare you say that Zuoqingwan was supposed to be the crown prince's wife? How dare you take advantage of me? Screw you. I'll cut off your dirty thing. I'll see how you sow your seeds from now on. You made me do this. Don't blame me for being ruthless." When the people outside heard this, their faces turned pale. Just then, Feng Wu threw out something wrapped in cloth. The thing went through the door and smashed into the Empress Dowager's face. The Empress Dowager couldn't dodge in time, and the thing hit her face, smearing her face with blood. What was that? The Empress Dowager was frightened by the soft thing. Thud! The Empress Dowager's eyes widened when the thing fell to the ground, and what was inside fell out. Before the Empress Dowager could finish, she fainted. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Help the Empress Dowager! For a moment, all hell broke loose. In the other room, staring at Zuoqingxi on the bed, Feng Wu looked so aggrieved and angry that she looked exactly like she was almost violated. Hearing the noise outside, she seemed to be anxious. She hurriedly wrapped her outer clothes around herself and rushed out of the door. A large group of people surrounded the door. Most of the people's attention was drawn to the Empress Dowager, but many of them were still looking at Feng Wu. To them, she was Hua Wushuang. Hence, when Feng Wu came out, everyone was shocked by her appearance. At this moment, Hua Wushuang's clothes were in a mess. They were torn in several places, and she could barely cover her body. She had been slapped, and there was blood all over her body. It was a shocking sight. Mrs. Hua was dumbfounded. Before she could react, Feng Wu rushed out. If she didn't run off now, she wouldn't have another chance. What if Mrs. Hua stopped her and locked her up? Not only did Feng Wu run out, but she also seemed out of control, as if she had been drugged. Someone stop her! Mrs. Hua shouted. And she rushed forward, but Feng Wu already saw her coming. Hence, she tore off half of her sleeve while Feng Wu rushed out like a madman. Go after her! Mrs. Hua scolded angrily. If the Empress Dowager hadn't fainted here, she would have chased after Hua Wushuang herself. Just then the Empress Dowager woke up. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was Hua Wushuang, frantically running away, and then she saw the thing on the ground from the corner of her eye. Mrs. Hua's expression froze. She had been so busy just now that she had forgotten about the thing on the ground. Return to the palace! Return to the palace immediately! The Empress Dowager was furious. Her face was flushed, and she was in a berserk state. Chapter 3550, Chapter 3550, Shocking News 2. Chapter 3550, Shocking News 2. Granny Gui gave Mrs. Hua a sympathetic look and followed the Empress Dowager. Mrs. Hua was so distressed that she tried to stop the Empress Dowager. Your Majesty! Unexpectedly, the Empress Dowager, who had always been nice to her, was furious this time. The Empress Dowager glared at Mrs. Hua. Get lost! Having said that, The Empress Dowager left in a huff, followed by everyone else. They were afraid that if they left too late, they would be seen as Mrs. Hua's accomplices. Mrs. Hua was a thorough person. She knew that something was wrong today. She knelt down behind the Empress Dowager and said sadly, "Your Majesty, someone must have planned this. I'll apologize to you when I find out the truth." In the past, the Empress Dowager would forgive Mrs. Hua for everything she did when the latter pretended to be meek and subservient. But this time, the Empress Dowager was obviously furious. Therefore, she didn't stop or turn around when she heard Mrs. Hua's words. She left in a huff. Mrs. Hua's heart sank. She knew what happened was unprecedentedly serious. After the Empress Dowager left, Mrs. Hua flew into a rage. Find out what happened. There were still many madams present. At this moment they all wanted to leave, but right then, a tragic cry came from inside. Mrs. Hua had already rushed into the house. "Qingxi, my son. Damn Hua Wuxuang. How could she do such a thing? Oh my God, the Hua family will pay for this." Mrs. Hua had a headache and walked straight into the house with anger in her eyes. The tragic scene in the room almost made her faint. The only grandson of the Zhua family, Zhua Qingxi, was lying on the bed. At this moment, his face was pale and bloodless. His clothes were covered in blood, especially his lower body. A part of his body was missing. It was really gone. Wasn't that the thing that hit the Empress Dowager in the face? Mrs. Hua was still hoping for a fluke, but when she realized what had really happened, she slipped and almost fell. "My lady." The maids quickly stepped forward to steady her. Mrs. Hua was so powerful that she could support the entire Hua family. She wouldn't show her emotions no matter what happened, but now her face was so pale. Shimo vaguely felt that they were in big trouble this time. Mrs. Hua gave her daughter-in-law a warning look. Lady Hua nodded and raised her hand to grab Zhua Qingxi. But at this moment Mrs. Zhua seemed to have gone crazy and bit Mrs. Hua's hand. Lady Wang was caught off guard. Gosh, Mrs. Zhua was so angry that she wanted to bite off a piece of Lady Wang's flesh. "Mrs. Zhua, you." Lady Wang stared at Mrs. Zhua in disbelief and tried to pull her hand back, but Mrs. Zhua wouldn't let go. The pain was excruciating. It was only when the members of the Hua family rushed up that Mrs. Zhua was finally dragged away. Mrs. Zhua looked like she had lost her mind. Lady Wang frowned. "Mrs. Zhua, we haven't gotten to the bottom of the matter yet. Why are you doing this?" As she spoke, she hid behind Mrs. Hua. However, Mrs. Zhua had lost control. "We haven't found out the truth yet. Qingxi is lying here right now. How can you say that you haven't found out the truth? Your Hua Wuxuang did it. Look at this. It's a murder weapon." Mrs. Zhua pointed at the shiny dagger on the ground. Chapter 3551, Chapter 3551, Shocking News 3. Chapter 3551, Shocking News 3. Holding the bloody weapon, Mrs. Zhua glared at Lady Wang. "Your Hua Wuxuang did it. Your Hua Wuxuang did it." Lady Wang looked at her mother-in-law for help. What should she do? The Hua family and the Zhua family were not the only ones present. Mrs. Dugu, Lady Li and Lady Yi, who were on good terms with the Zhua family, were also there. The Dugu family and the Zhua family were in-laws, so the Dugu family would definitely stand on the Zhua family's side. Zhua Qingfeng's daughter married Duke Li's family, so they were also in-laws. As for Lady Yi, she was a smart person. She had tried her best to set Hua Wuxuang and the crown prince up, but after what had happened, that was no longer possible. Therefore, she immediately sided with the Zhua family. Hence, all three ladies stood behind Mrs. Zhua and glared at Lady Hua. Lady Wang felt a headache coming on. She turned to Mrs. Hua for help. Mrs. Hua's expression was extremely ugly. In that instant, she could already tell which side these ladies were on. They had sided with the Zhua family. That was the smart move. The Hua family had only just joined the game, and they had risen to power in the capital because of the Empress Dowager. At that thought, Mrs. Hua knew that the Zhua family wasn't easy to deal with. She softened her tone and said to Mrs. Zhua, "We still need to investigate this matter. Mrs. Zhua, can you leave your son to me?" Holding the pale Wuxia in her arms, Mrs. Zhua wouldn't let go. Mrs. Hua frowned. That part might be reattached. If that were the case, the Hua family and the Zhua family might be able to reconcile. At that thought, Mrs. Hua stared at Mrs. Zhua seriously. "So please give him to me." Mrs. Zhua had lost her control, but now she looked hopeful again. "Really? Is there really hope? Can you reattach it to Qingxi's body?" Lady Hua hurriedly said, "My mother-in-law is a supreme-level medicine refiner. She taught Wushuang medical skills." Was that so? Everyone looked at Mrs. Hua in surprise. This Mrs. Hua really hid it well. If it weren't for this, no one would have known. The Hua family was incredible. Mrs. Zhua gritted her teeth. "You said it. You said you could cure Qingxi. You said it yourself." Mrs. Hua frowned. She didn't say anything. However, in order to appease the crazy Mrs. Zhua, Mrs. Hua could only nod. "Yes, I said it. Hurry up, and let me take care of your son." Mrs. Hua turned around and glared at Ma Shu. "Hurry up and pick that thing up. We need to treat him immediately." It seemed that Mrs. Hua was going to treat Zhua Qingxi personally. When Lady Yi thought of the treatment, she felt awkward in every way. But now, they only wanted to cure Zhua Qingxi, so both the Hua family and the Zhua family deliberately ignored this embarrassing question. The gender of the doctor shouldn't matter. Mrs. Hua chased all the unrelated people out and began her treatment. Outside the door, everyone waited nervously. Seeing Mrs. Zhua put her hands together, Mrs. Hua comforted her in a hurry. "It's fine. My mother-in-law is a great doctor. She can revive the dead. Zhua Qingxi will be fine." Mrs. Zhua glared at Mrs. Hua and gritted her teeth. "If you can't cure her, the Zhua family will never forgive you." Everyone thought that the Zhua family still had Zhua Qingwan, but only Mrs. Zhua knew that Zhua Qingwan was already. Chapter 3552. Chapter 3552. Shocking News 4. Chapter 3552. Shocking News 4. Everyone thought the Zhua family still had Zhua Qingwan, but only Mrs. Zhua knew that Zhua Qingwan's ability had been destroyed by Feng Wu, and was now lying in Firmament Palace. No one knew if she would pull through. Mrs. Hua didn't expect Mrs. Zhua to be so difficult to deal with. Seeing that Mrs. Zhua was in a bad mood, she retreated with a frown. At this moment, everyone was busy. Only Hua Wushuang's maid Songxiang was kneeling on the ground and trembling. She was probably the only person who had seen the inside story with her own eyes. So at this moment, she was kneeling on the ground and trembling. Lady Wang stepped forward and stared at Songxiang. "Songxiang, what's happened?" I. Songxiang was flustered, and her body was trembling. Mrs. Zhua was staring at her too, and so were the other ladies. Lady Wang said to the others, "Songxiang is Wu Huang's personal maid. She's always with Wushuang, so she must know what has happened." The other ladies nodded in agreement. This incident was too sudden and too strange. Thus he had to ask. Songxiang said, "Miss Wushuang was injured by Feng Wu during the fight, and she hasn't recovered yet. She's been cultivating in seclusion ever since she came back. But because of Mrs. Hua's birthday and Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's arrival, Mrs. Hua said that she would ask Miss Wushuang to come out at the last moment. After she met the Empress Dowager, she could go back to her recovery. I did as Mrs. Hua said and only knocked on the door at the last moment, but I still startled Miss Wushuang. There was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth, but she endured the discomfort and went to see Her Majesty. Then there was the birthday celebration." Lady Wang frowned. "We all know what happened on the birthday. You don't have to repeat it. Just tell us what happened after Wushuang left the hall." The other madams nodded. Indeed, they wanted to know what Hua Wushuang had experienced after leaving the banquet. Songxiang knelt on the ground, sobbing in fear. She said intermittently, "When Miss Wushuang left the hall, she wasn't feeling well. She stood under the tree and coughed. But at this moment, the young master of the Zhou family walked toward her. Lady Wang went straight to the point. Was it young Master Zhou who approached Wushuang? Song Xiang said yes. I was a little slow when I ran out after Miss Wushuang, so I was a little far away, but I saw it with my own eyes. It was young Master Zhou who went to look for Miss Wushuang. I wasn't the only one who saw it. Many people passed by. There was Dan Kai and Granny Li. They can both testify. Lady Wang was relieved. She told her servants to fetch the two servants. Then she turned to Song Xiang and asked, "What happened next?" Song Xiang said, "I was a little far away, so I don't know what young Masters were told Miss Wushuang. I only saw young Masters were bowing to her and saying something that made her laugh." Seeing the frowns on the madam's faces, Song Xiang hurriedly said, "Dan Kai and Granny Li can testify. They didn't go far at that time. I even heard Granny Li say in a low voice, 'Why is young Masters was so flirtatious?'" Mrs. Zhu's face darkened. The development of the situation wasn't what she wanted. She stared at Song Xiang warningly. In the end, Song Xiang brought in the other two witnesses. And then, Lady Yi asked with a frown, "That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.